Hunson Abadeer's past is one of the most elusive stories in the entire mythology of Adventure Time. He appears in the series with overwhelming power, sharp confidence, and a sense of chaos that feels both ancient and deeply personal, yet the world of Ooo rarely stops to explain where he comes from, or what shaped him before he became the ruler of the Nightosphere. Understanding him requires looking not at what he tells others, but at what the narrative reveals indirectly. The story of Hunson's past is not a simple timeline. It is a portrait of a being who grew into a force, a presence crafted by decisions, losses, and cosmic alignments that shaped the Nightosphere long before Marceline ever met him. To grasp his past, one must begin by recognizing that Hunson is not a villain in a standard sense. He is not a tyrant in the way that Gumbald was, nor is he a destroyer like the Lich. He is something older, something stranger, something bound to an order that exists outside simple morality. His past is defined by this tension, a life shaped by a role that does not allow softness, yet repeatedly hints that softness once existed within him. The earliest hints of Hunson's past lie in the Nightosphere itself. The dimension is chaotic, unpredictable, and built around the management of souls and contracts. It behaves like an elaborate system with rules that seem harsh, yet they are rules nonetheless. In Canon, Hunson's rule over this realm is absolute, which means his past cannot be separated from the rise of the Nightosphere as a functioning domain. This suggests that, before he became a father or a figure of fear to the people of Ooo, he was a foundational architect of a dimension built on the trade and movement of essence. The Nightosphere is not portrayed as a realm that emerged naturally. It feels fashioned, shaped by a mind with a sense of humour that leans toward the absurd, a mind that understands both the practicality and the cruelty of binding agreements. Hunson's past, then, begins with creation of order in a place where order barely exists. He is not born into control. He takes control, establishing the rhythm of chaos that defines the Nightosphere. The rules of this realm reflect his personality, which means that his early life likely forged his understanding of control, trickery, and structure more than any external mentor. Hunson is not the product of a conventional lineage. He is the product of a role he took for himself. This is reinforced by the nature of his power. Hunson is one of the rare beings in Adventure Time whose capabilities do not seem tied to magic in the way wizards rely on it. His abilities are inherent, woven into who he is. He consumes souls without effort, reshapes objects casually, and floats with the ease of someone no longer bound to mortal physics. These traits point to a past in which his form and essence transformed long before he became a father. At some point in the distant past, Hunson crossed a threshold from ordinary to transcendent. The series never offers a clear cause for this change, but the clues imply that he did not begin as a creature of pure malevolence. Instead, he likely acquired power through a long arc of transformation. The Nightosphere's structure reflects a mind that has experienced both responsibility and loneliness. It functions like a bureaucracy, yet also behaves like a playground of chaos. This combination suggests that Hunson's past included periods where he needed control to survive, along with periods where he found freedom through mischief. The duality of his character is encoded in the landscape he governs. His past is a balance of necessity and indulgence, discipline and anarchy, order and carefree rebellion. Another critical part of Hunson's past emerges through his strange relationship with the concept of work. When he interacts with anyone from Ooo, he speaks casually about his responsibilities in the Nightosphere, as if managing souls is just another job. This framing reveals a past where he did not simply choose power, he accepted a burden. Hunson's past is not entirely self-seeking, even though he acts as if it is. He plays the role of a cosmic administrator. That role carries weight, and it hints that before any relationship with Marceline, he spent an unimaginable amount of time building the systems that define the Nightosphere. His past is filled with the unseen labour of constructing a dimension that depends on his whims, yet operates under strict rules that he cannot break without unravelling the order he created. This suggests that Hunson's earliest motivation was survival in a universe where powerful beings and chaotic forces constantly reshape reality. By creating a domain with rules, he carved out a place where he could exist securely. His past includes this essential act of carving out certainty in a cosmos that does not naturally provide any. Despite constructing this realm of power, Hunson's past is not defined by isolation. The single greatest clue to his earlier nature comes from the existence of Marceline. Before she was born, Hunson was not alone. He had some form of relationship with her mother, a relationship that existed outside the Nightosphere and outside his usual interactions. Canon does not name or describe Marceline's mother in detail. Instead, the story shows that Marceline is half demon and half human. This fact alone reveals a past where Hunson stepped outside his role as ruler and allowed himself to build something personal. This choice indicates a time in his life when he wanted connection, when he allowed himself to experience something beyond duty. His past includes a moment where he tried to build a family. This part of his story is not portrayed as a grand romance. Rather, it is presented quietly through the existence of Marceline herself. This silence around it strengthens the idea that Hunson's past included complexities he does not speak about because acknowledging them would expose vulnerability. The fact that he had a child with someone from the human world shows that he once lived outside the Nightosphere long enough to form a bond that shaped both him and Marceline's mother. This choice required intention. It required wanting something more than souls and contracts. Even though Canon does not provide detailed scenes of their relationship, the tone of Marceline's memories as a child provides hints about Hunson's nature during her early life. Marceline remembers him as overwhelming and frightening, yet not absent. This contrast suggests that in his past, Hunson was present as a guardian figure, though an imperfect and often harmful one. It indicates that he did not understand how to parent, not because he lacked emotion, but because he lacked experience. His past did not include family. His past was shaped by the solitude of rulership and the chaos of the Nightosphere. When he tried to be part of Marceline's early life, he brought that same energy into moments that required gentleness. His failure as a father in her youth points to a past where he learned power but not nurturing, where he learned dominance but not connection. These past patterns shaped the mistakes he made during Marceline's childhood. Understanding his past means acknowledging that he was not cruel for the sake of cruelty. He simply did not know how to be anything other than what the Nightosphere taught him to be. Another part of Hunson's past emerges through the way other powerful beings react to him. No cosmic entities treat him as a subordinate. He is respected, feared, or tolerated, but never dismissed. This indicates a past where he established himself as an equal among ancient forces. It suggests that long before Marceline was born, Hunson participated in interactions with gods, sorcerers, and cosmic beings. His confidence in the presence of others, like Peppermint Butler or Death, supports this. His history is not rooted in isolation from the greater magical and cosmic hierarchy. It is rooted in participation. The Nightosphere is not a forgotten corner of the universe. It is one of the essential realms that keep reality balanced, and his past includes becoming the one who governs it. This position would require proving himself across eras of conflict and cosmic negotiation. Hunson's past includes victories and agreements that allowed him to maintain control uncontested. These hidden trials shaped his approach to authority. He does not need to brag. His past accomplishments speak through the quiet certainty with which he carries himself. The clearest emotional dimension of Hunson's past becomes visible through Marceline's growth. When she emerges as an independent figure in U, Hunson does not try to control her life. He intervenes only when summoned or when the Nightosphere's balance is at risk. This restraint implies that in his past he learned the cost of overbearing control. His mistakes with Marceline created consequences that lasted centuries. His past includes a painful understanding that love cannot be built on dominance. Even though he lacks the emotional vocabulary to express regret, his behavior shows that he learned from the failures of his earlier life. This too belongs to his past. A period of reflection, possibly a long one, shaped the version of Hunson that Marceline encounters later. He becomes less invasive, less explosive, and more willing to let her define her own choices. His past contains a slow evolution of perspective, shaped by centuries of distance between father and daughter. Understanding Hunson's past also requires acknowledging the symbolic nature of the Nightosphere. The realm reflects patterns of fear, ambition, temptation, and consequence. These themes are not random. They mirror Hunson's long history of managing beings who enter his realm seeking shortcuts, power, or escape. His past includes centuries of witnessing the flaws and desires of countless souls. Over time, this shaped his perspective on morality. He sees good and evil as irrelevant because he has spent ages processing the mistakes and choices of others. His past taught him that the universe is not defined by moral simplicity. This is why he never behaves like a conventional villain. He is shaped by a role that operates outside those boundaries. The final part of his past is revealed not through what he did, but through how he continues to evolve. The fact that he improves as a father, even slightly, suggests that he once lived without guidance or affection. The fact that he cares about maintaining the Nightosphere implies that he once lived in a state of instability and had to create structure to survive. The fact that he does not fear cosmic entities suggests that he rose to power through challenges that forged a sense of invulnerability. His past is not the story of a demon born into chaos. It is the story of someone who slowly became a figure of authority through centuries of effort, loss, missteps, and unusual forms of affection. Hunson Abadeer's past cannot be described as a linear sequence of events because the show deliberately keeps it fragmented, allowing viewers to assemble its shape through patterns. What emerges is a portrait of a complex being who built his identity through choices that mixed power with loneliness and authority with yearning. His past is not defined by cruelty. It is defined by the absence of guidance, the burden of responsibility, and the eventual realization that love can coexist with chaos. Hunson's story does not begin with fatherhood, nor with power, nor even with the Nightosphere. It begins with a mind that had to shape itself without a model, a mind that learned through trial and error how to build a realm, how to enforce rules, and eventually how to accept that connection is not a weakness. His past is a tapestry of cosmic survival, unexpected affection, and a long search for balance within a universe that rarely offers it. Through that lens, the secret past of Hunson Abadeer becomes not only a source of lore, but a foundation for understanding why his future relationships matter, especially the one with the daughter, who eventually teaches him what he never learned in the centuries before her. Hunson Abadeer's path to becoming the ruler of the Nightosphere is one of the most mysterious transformations in the world of Adventure Time. The Canon never presents a direct account of how he claimed power, yet the nature of the Nightosphere offers enough clues to reconstruct a grounded interpretation. It is not a realm that rewards simple strength. It is a dimension shaped by entropy, filled with creatures that operate outside the logic of U, and organized around a system of contracts, obligations, and soul trafficking. Whoever rules that place must do more than dominate through force. They must understand chaos on a structural level. They must impose rules that the realm itself obeys. This means that Hunson's rise to power was not simply a victory in a battle. It was a process, a long evolution in which he aligned himself with the essential nature of the Nightosphere until he and the realm became inseparable. To understand this transformation, one must first consider what the Nightosphere represents. The dimension does not behave like a typical underworld. It lacks the strict moral sorting seen in classical mythology. It is not designed to punish the wicked or reward the virtuous. Instead, it functions as a place where essence is processed, altered, and sometimes consumed. It contains countless beings whose forms vary wildly, yet they all appear to operate under an unspoken hierarchy. The realm exhibits internal logic. Creatures know their roles, consequences exist, and the landscape shifts in patterns that reflect rules rather than chaos for its own sake. This structure suggests that the Nightosphere needed a ruler who could integrate with its nature rather than reshape it through brute force. Therefore, Hunson's ascent must have involved aligning his identity with the dimension's inner workings. Hunson's canonical abilities provide clues to how this alignment occurred. His power set is distinct from the magic used by wizards or sorcerers in U. Wizards rely on spells, rituals, or artifacts. Hunson's abilities appear intrinsic. He consumes souls instinctively. He manipulates forms effortlessly. He changes his own shape without strain. These traits suggest that he underwent a transformation that bound his essence to the Nightosphere. This is not the transformation of a being who discovered a powerful artifact. It is the transformation of someone who became a natural extension of a dimension with laws deeper than magic. His early life, then, likely involved exposure to forces that redefined him at a fundamental level. Whether he was born into this power or acquired it through a rite of passage is unknown, but the consistency of his abilities indicates that he became what he is long before he took political control. One of the clearest signs of his deep connection to the Nightosphere is the way the dimension reacts to him. When Hunson acts, the realm seems to accommodate his presence. His movements do not distort the fey environment. He glides through the chaos as if it recognizes him. Creatures do not flee from him in random panic. They treat him as a natural authority. This relationship points to a past where he earned the Nightosphere's compliance. The realm accepts him because he embodies its core qualities. That acceptance is not automatic. It must have been forged through trials that Canon never displays directly. The dimension must have tested him, challenging his ability to navigate chaos, enforce structure, and balance instinct with control. Through these tests, he developed the capability to grasp the Nightosphere's complexity and rule it without being consumed by it. Another clue lies in the nature of the contracts that define the Nightosphere. The fact that deals and obligations hold power there suggests a ruler who understands the importance of binding structures. Contracts preserve stability in a realm that thrives on unpredictability. This indicates that Hunson's rise included mastering the art of crafting rules that hold intrinsic power. These rules are not random. They reflect his personality. They favor mischief, trickery, and consequences that feel ironic rather than purely punitive. This pattern reveals that he shaped the Nightosphere through a blend of control and humor, implying that he once navigated challenges where wit mattered as much as strength. His rise to rule likely included moments where he outsmarted competitors, creatures, or entities that also sought control. In a realm built around choices and consequences, intelligence is a more valuable weapon than raw force. Considering all of this, Hunson's past begins to take shape as a journey through layers of chaos, testing, and self-definition. He did not storm the Nightosphere and seize the throne. He gradually became the kind of being who is recognized by the realm itself as its rightful ruler. This recognition implies a history of encounters with creatures that embodied the dimension's nature. These interactions would have taught him how to manage, manipulate, and coexist with distorted beings that function according to their own surreal logic. Through these experiences, he learned how to balance the Nightosphere's appetite for chaos with the structural elements necessary for order. His rise to power is also reflected in the way the Nightosphere has a consistent system of authority. There are rules describing who controls the realm. There are consequences for breaking contracts. There are pathways for outsiders to challenge power, but those pathways are filled with traps that require cunning to navigate. This structure did not appear on its own. Hunson's past includes long periods of system building, refining the rules that govern the realm. He did not simply inherit a throne. He built the throne by stabilizing the chaos around him. His past, therefore, contains years, perhaps centuries, of experimentation. He tried different structures, different forms of enforcement, and different methods of managing souls before arriving at the system Canon presence. Another essential part of his rise is the way he interacts with the concept of work. Hunson speaks about his duties as if they are an ongoing responsibility rather than a privilege. This reveals that his past included acceptance of a role that is difficult and exhausting, even for someone with his power. He became the ruler not by seizing power for personal gain, but by stepping into a position that carries constant obligation. This suggests that his younger self did not simply aspire to authority. He may have been compelled by circumstance, by the chaos of the Nightosphere before it was unified, to impose order. His past contains a struggle to create stability in a place where stability rarely exists. Over time, that struggle transformed into a job, and the job became his identity. Hunson's rise to rule also involves an emotional dimension that Canon reveals indirectly through Marceline. The fact that he later formed a relationship outside the Nightosphere shows that his early life was not entirely consumed by rulership. There must have been a period before he solidified his role where he had the freedom to explore the world beyond his dimension. This suggests that his rise occurred before he became entirely bound to the Nightosphere's duties. The timeline implied by Marceline's existence indicates that Hunson had already become the ruler before she was born. This means that his relationship with her mother took place after he had consolidated power. This detail reveals that his past included a phase where he balanced personal desires with cosmic responsibility. It also implies that the structure he built in the Nightosphere was stable enough to function without his constant presence, at least temporarily. Another important clue comes from the way other cosmic beings treat Hunson. They do not dismiss him. They do not treat him as someone who stumbled into power. Instead, He commands a level of respect and wariness that suggests a long history of victories, negotiations, and displays of strength. His past includes encounters with beings who operate at the same cosmic level. These interactions shaped his authority and solidified his place among the most powerful entities in the Adventure Time multiverse. The recognition he receives from others is not the recognition of a tyrant who rules through fear. It is the recognition of someone who has earned his role through a blend of capability, wisdom, and unpredictable behavior that makes him dangerous, but not reckless. His past contains victories that Canon only hints at through the echoes of his presence. What makes Hunson's rise even more complex is the way he integrates his personality into his rulership. The Nightosphere mirrors his sense of humour, his taste for irony, and his fondness for trickery. This suggests that his past includes shaping his identity in ways that align with the dimension's energy. He did not adapt to fit the realm adapted to fit him. This means that the moment he became its ruler, the environment reshaped itself to reflect his nature. This phenomenon would require deep compatibility. It reveals that his rise was not a conquest, but a merging. His past contains a period where he transitioned from being an individual with power to being a being whose identity is inseparable from the dimension he controls. His rulership also hinges on one final detail that often goes unnoticed. The Nightosphere needs a ruler. Without one, the dimension would collapse into pure chaos. Hunson's past includes the realization that he was not only the best candidate for the role, he may have been the only one capable of sustaining it without losing himself. His rise to power is therefore rooted in a sense of fit. The realm needed him as much as he needed the structure it provided. This mutual dependence shaped the entire foundation of his rule. Understanding the birth of the Nightosphere's ruler means understanding this symbiotic relationship. Hunson did not gain power through a singular transformational event. He grew into the role through centuries of interaction with the dimension, learning its patterns, its quirks, and its needs. He gradually aligned his essence with it until the realm acknowledged him as its anchor. His past is not the story of a tyrant imposing his will on chaos. It is the story of a being who found purpose in a dimension that mirrored his contradictions. As he matured into the ruler the Nightosphere needed, he established systems that protect both the realm and himself. He created a job out of rulership. He built order out of distortion. He became a force that maintains equilibrium in a place that resists equilibrium at every turn. His rise is therefore a testament to the complexity of his character. It shows that long before he made mistakes as a father, long before he became a figure of fear or fascination to creatures in Oo, he walked a path filled with trials that forged him into the only being capable of holding the Nightosphere together. This chapter of Hunson Abadeer's past reveals that his rise was not an accident. It was a transformation shaped by purpose, resilience, and a deep understanding of dimensions that operate outside mortal logic. His story is one of becoming rather than conquering, of alignment rather than domination. The birth of the Nightosphere's ruler is therefore not a moment in time, but an era of growth that defined everything that came after. Hunson Abadeer's power is one of the most distinctive forces in the Adventure Time universe, a presence that does not behave like traditional magic, elemental influence, or cosmic authority. Understanding the nature of his power requires examining how it operates, where it fits within the broader metaphysics of the multiverse, and how it shaped his past and identity long before Marceline or Oo ever entered his life. His abilities form a complete system, one that defines his relationship with the Nightosphere and clarifies why he is uniquely qualified to rule a dimension built on chaotic energy, binding contracts, and transformations that challenge the very concept of a physical form. This chapter explores the nature of his power by focusing on what Canon shows directly, what Canon implies through behavior, and what logical conclusions can be drawn without stepping beyond established rules. Hunson's most iconic ability is the consumption of souls. This is not a metaphorical act, and not an acquired skill. It is an inherent function of his existence. When he consumes the essence of another being, he does not require preparation, ritual, or tools. He acts instinctively, suggesting that this power is tied to his fundamental physiology. The ability reveals several layers of his nature. First, it demonstrates that Hunson's form operates on a plane beyond physical matter. Souls in the Adventure Time universe are not simple energy sources. They are complete, self-sustaining expressions of identity. The fact that Hunson can ingest them without consequence indicates that his internal structure is built to process essence directly. He does not use souls as fuel in a traditional sense. Instead, the act appears linked to maintaining order, exerting dominance, and altering his environment. His power transforms others and reinforces his own place within the Nightosphere. This ability also reveals a second trait. Hunson does not lose control when consuming souls. He does not become erratic or overwhelmed. He remains entirely himself. This suggests that he is not feeding on essence for survival. He is performing a function that relates to his role as ruler. The Nightosphere requires a system for processing and managing essence, and Hunson's inherent connection to this process positions him as both administrator and enforcement mechanism. His power, therefore, reflects the structure of the realm he governs. The ability to absorb essence is not an expression of malice, it is an expression of responsibility. Through this ability, Hunson maintains the balance of the Nightosphere by asserting control over beings that disrupt or challenge the established order. Another defining aspect of Hunson's power is the way he manipulates form. He is capable of reshaping his body, altering size, extending limbs, and shifting features without strain. This is not shape-shifting in the way Jake performs it. Jake's abilities come from a magical mutation that allows him to stretch and distort his physical body. Hunson's form operates according to an entirely different set of principles. His shape is not bound to biological structure. When he alters his body, it is not a stretch or compression. It is a recalibration of essence. His physical manifestation is a projection of his nature rather than a biological organism. This means he does not experience transformation as a change to a physical shell. He experiences it as an expression of identity. This trait reveals that Hunson's body is not the source of his power. His essence is. His form is merely a visual representation that he maintains for communication and interaction. When he shifts shape, he is not altering what he is. He is adjusting how he presents himself. This distinction is essential to understanding the nature of his power. Hunson's existence flows from his intrinsic connection to the Nightosphere. His form is a vessel, but his identity is a constant. His physical presentation can change endlessly because it is not tied to mortality, biology, or matter in a traditional sense. Another key dimension of his power is his immunity to magic as it operates in U. Many beings in the series rely on spells, alchemy, natural magic, or the elemental system to assert influence. Hunson interacts with these forces as if they are secondary to his own nature. Magic does not restrict him. He is not bound by the rules that govern wizards or elementals. This suggests that his power is not magical in the conventional sense. It is metaphysical, rooted in the nature of the Nightosphere itself. He is a being whose capabilities emerge from cosmic structure rather than from learned techniques. The distinction is important because it places Hunson in a category of entities who do not practice magic but embody it. This embodiment is most obvious when he interacts with artifacts or spells. Magic items that would challenge or restrict mortals do not affect him. Barriers built to contain. Magical energy do not hinder his movement. He recognizes magic but does not respond to it as a threat. This reveals that his essence operates on a frequency distinct from the magical spectrum of U. He is a being tied to a dimension that operates according to its own laws, and his power reflects that. It is not subject to the limitations or weaknesses of conventional magic. This makes him one of the most stable and consistent beings in the multiverse. Hunson's personality also offers insight into the nature of his power. He is confident, calm, and amused by situations that would terrify mortals. He carries himself with the ease of someone who exists beyond physical risk. This behavior suggests that his power provides a level of invulnerability that extends beyond durability. His confidence is not bravado. It is awareness of a truth embedded in his existence. He cannot be harmed by ordinary means, and he knows that few beings in the multiverse have the ability to challenge him directly. This creates a sense of detachment, not because he is uninterested in the world, but because he experiences reality differently from mortals. Another essential clue about the nature of his power is his ability to manage the Nightosphere's laws. These laws are not arbitrary. They are woven into the structure of the dimension. They determine how contracts function, how obligations bind, and how essence travels through the realm. For Hunson to enforce these laws, his power must be fundamentally linked to the dimension's architecture. He is not simply a ruler. He is the anchor of the system. This means that his power is both external and internal. External, because he can impose his will on the Nightosphere. Internal, because the Nightosphere itself recognizes him as its core stabilizing force. This relationship reveals that Hunson's power is a blend of cosmic authority, metaphysical essence, and dimensional integration. He did not acquire a throne and then gain power. His power allowed him to become the throne. The Nightosphere is not simply a place he controls. It is an extension of his nature. When he enforces contracts or reshapes the environment, he is not performing magic. He is exercising an intrinsic property of his existence. This makes his power self-sustaining and self-reinforcing. The dimension he rules strengthens him, and he, in turn, stabilizes the dimension. Another fascinating aspect of Hunson's power is the way it interacts with emotional energy. Although he appears detached and indifferent, he is not devoid of feeling. His interactions with Marceline reveal flashes of genuine emotion. These moments indicate that his essence is influenced by connections, even if he struggles to express them. This reveals that Hunson's power is not purely mechanical. It is tied to identity, and identity in the Adventure Time universe is shaped by relationships. His power is therefore resilient, but not static. It evolves subtly through his experiences. His connection with Marceline does not weaken him. It humanizes certain aspects of his behavior, while leaving his essence unchanged. This shows that his power is stable enough to withstand emotional influence without being compromised. It is also important to consider his immortality. Hunson does not age. He does not degrade. His form remains consistent across centuries. This indicates that he is not bound to time in the way mortals are. His immortality is not a spell or curse. It is a natural state. This means his power exists outside the temporal structure of U. He experiences time as a sequence, but he is not affected by it. This places him in the category of beings like Death, Prismo, and cosmic entities whose nature transcends linear progression. His immortality reinforces the idea that he is an extension of the Nightosphere rather than a separate being. Another important component of his power is the way he interacts with physical environments in U. When Hunson enters the mortal world, he does not move as someone bound by physical laws. He floats, glides, and moves with fluid precision. His presence distorts the environment subtly, revealing that his essence shifts the local metaphysics around him. The world does not suffer dramatic changes when he appears, but it adapts, bending slightly to accommodate his energy. This shows that his power interacts with reality at a foundational level. He displaces the rules of the environment just by existing within it. Finally, the most revealing aspect of Hunson's power is the way it coexists with his flaws. Despite his immense capabilities, he is not perfect. He makes mistakes. He misunderstands emotions. He is careless with relationships. This contrast between cosmic power and personal imperfection shows that his abilities do not define his entire being. They are an extension of his role, not a reflection of his character. His flaws highlight that his nature includes both structured, authority, and chaotic impulse. This blend mirrors the essence of the Nightosphere and reinforces the idea that his power arises from deep alignment with the dimension he rules. Hunson Abadeer's power is not a simple set of abilities. It is a cohesive system woven into his identity. It emerges from his connection to the Nightosphere, reflects the dimension's structure, and interacts with the metaphysics of the multiverse in ways that transcend traditional magic. His power is responsible for stabilizing one of the most chaotic realms in existence, yet it also interacts with emotional relationships that reveal the complex layers of his character. It is a power built on essence, authority, and cosmic integration, forming a foundation for everything he becomes in the story of Adventure Time. The story of Marceline's mother is one of the quietest mysteries in Adventure Time. She appears in the background of history as a figure who shaped Marceline's earliest years and connected Hunson Abadeer to a world beyond the Nightosphere. Yet Canon reveals very little about her identity, origin, or the circumstances that brought her and Hunson together. The absence of explicit information is not a gap to be filled with invention. It is a deliberate silence that asks viewers to interpret her through the consequences of her existence, the qualities that passed into Marceline, and the emotional tone that surrounds both her memory and her absence. Understanding her within the boundaries of canon requires focusing on what the narrative implies indirectly, grounding the analysis in themes, character development, and the broader metaphysics of the multiverse. Chapter 4 examines the unknown mother through these lenses, forming a picture that respects canon while exploring the weight of her role in Hunson's past. The first and most important fact is that Marceline is half demon and half human. This places her mother firmly within the human lineage. She is not a magical creature, not a cosmic being, and not an elemental. Her origin lies in the same lineage that produced the humans who survived the Great Mushroom War. Canon shows humans living in isolated pockets after the war. They form tight communities, protect their own, and avoid contact with most supernatural beings. This context suggests that Marceline's mother grew up in a world shaped by caution and resilience. Her human identity matters deeply because it ties Marceline to the emotional intensity, creativity, endurance, and vulnerability that define humanity in Adventure Time. Understanding Marceline's mother begins with understanding the qualities that Marceline inherits from her. Marceline has empathy that runs deeper than most supernatural beings. She forms bonds in ways that mirror human patterns, not Nightosphere patterns. She processes memory through emotion, not through power. She carries human fragility alongside demonic resilience. Her sense of loneliness, longing, and connection reflect human experience more than demonic instinct. From her mother, Marceline inherits the capacity for grief, joy, and enduring attachment. These qualities shape her entire arc. The presence of such traits implies that her mother was someone with depth, kindness, and a level of emotional understanding that helped guide Marceline during her earliest years. Another clue arises from the way Marceline speaks about her childhood. Her memories indicate that her mother was present during a period of recovery, travel, and survival. This suggests that Marceline's mother lived through the harsh post-war world and knew how to protect a child within it. She understood the risks of wandering across the ruins of humanity and the challenges of caring for a child in a world full of mutants, scarcity, and instability. From this, one can infer that she possessed strength grounded not in supernatural ability but in human survival skills. Her resourcefulness shaped Marceline's early resilience. Canon also implies that Marceline's mother died or disappeared while Marceline was still young. Marceline carries sorrow that traces back to a loss she cannot fully articulate. The sadness in her early stories does not stem from a single catastrophic moment, but from gradual separation, change, and abandonment tied to the aftermath of war and the complexities of her mixed heritage. The absence of her mother in later life establishes an emotional contrast. Marceline's memories of early safety and warmth are tied to her human parent. Her mother's disappearance leaves an emotional void that influences Marceline's relationships for centuries. Even without explicit scenes, the narrative tone indicates that her mother played a gentle and stabilizing role in Marceline's life until circumstances tore them apart. The connection between Hunson and Marceline's mother requires careful, canon-rooted interpretation. The story never portrays them interacting directly, nor does it describe their relationship. What is known is that Marceline came from a union between a powerful demon ruler and a human survivor. The very existence of this relationship implies that Hunson and Marceline's mother shared a period of proximity that was not random. Hunson did not casually wander into the human world. When he enters Oo or interacts with mortals, he behaves with purpose. A connection strong enough to result in a child suggests that he stepped outside his usual dimension with intent. The tone of Marceline's memories provides context for interpreting that relationship. In her early childhood, Hunson was not consistently present. He appeared irregularly and behaved in ways that frightened her, despite likely believing he was acting responsibly. This inconsistency implies that Hunson and Marceline's mother did not share a stable long-term partnership. Their relationship may have been brief or fragmented, shaped by the fundamental incompatibilities between their natures. Yet despite this instability, the fact that they had a child together indicates that their relationship included trust at certain moments. Marceline's mother must have seen something in Hunson beyond the intimidating exterior, whether it was charm, honesty, or an emotional vulnerability that Hunson rarely displays. She formed a connection that felt meaningful enough to bring Marceline into the world. Another important detail is that Marceline's mother raised her without sustained help from Hunson. This suggests that she was independent, capable, and emotionally strong. She carried the responsibility of protecting a child who possessed demonic traits that may have complicated their life among humans. Her courage becomes evident through the simple fact that Marceline survived those early years. The world after the war was filled with hazards. Travelers faced starvation, illness, unstable terrain, and the constant threat of mutated creatures. A parent raising a child alone in such conditions had to possess knowledge, instinct, and deep love. Through Marceline's memories, one gains a partial reflection of her mother's character. She must have been patient and gentle because Marceline's earliest emotional attachments carry warmth. She must have been perceptive because Marceline developed the ability to read others with remarkable sensitivity. She must have been resilient because she survived long enough to nurture Marceline through years that would have overwhelmed a weaker person. The growing distance between Hunson and Marceline's mother can be inferred through the emotional tone of Marceline's reflections. Hunson seems unaware of human fragility. His presence early in Marceline's life feels disruptive, not supportive. This suggests that Marceline's mother recognized that Hunson did not understand the needs of a human child. Their worlds operated under different rules. Her world required caution, subtlety, and emotional grounding. His world rewarded chaos, strength, and dominance. These differences may have created tension that neither could overcome. The fact that Marceline was left in her mother's care supports the idea that they did not share a joint household. Instead, Marceline's mother likely chose to raise her in the human world while Hunson returned to his responsibilities in the Nightosphere. Her disappearance or death represents a turning point in Marceline's life and an emotional defining moment for Hunson. Even though Canon does not show Hunson reacting to her loss, his later behavior toward Marceline suggests that her mother's absence influenced him indirectly. Marceline's loneliness strained their relationship. Hunson's inability to provide emotional support created long-term damage. Yet, the fact that he respects Marceline's autonomy later in life indicates that he learned from those early failures. This growth suggests that he understands the significance of her mother's role, even if he cannot articulate it. The existence of Marceline's mother also reveals something important about Hunson's inner life. For a being who embodies the Nightosphere, forming a connection with a human represents a significant divergence from his cosmic role. The Nightosphere is the heart of his identity. Leaving it for personal reasons is exceptional. This implies that his relationship with Marceline's mother happened during a period where he allowed himself to explore life beyond his responsibilities. This moment of exploration changed the trajectory of his existence. The fact that Marceline exists shows that he allowed someone into his life who represented everything his realm is not. The human world, with its fragility and emotional intensity, stands in stark contrast to the Nightosphere. Through Marceline's mother, Hunson experienced a dimension of life that he had not encountered before. This experience, even if brief, influenced his understanding of connection. Marceline's mother also shapes the story of how Marceline approaches her own identity. Marceline carries the conflict between her human and demonic sides throughout her entire arc. This conflict begins with her mother's influence. From her, Marceline inherits her sense of empathy, music, creativity, and emotional vulnerability. These traits clash with the chaotic impulses of her demon heritage. Her mother's presence provided balance during early childhood. Her absence forced Marceline to define herself without guidance. This emotional struggle becomes a central aspect of Marceline's development. The unknown mother shapes Marceline's entire internal landscape, despite her limited presence in the story. Canon's silence about her mother's fate gives weight to the idea that her story ended in hardship. Whether through death, separation, or circumstances beyond her control, she left Marceline without the guidance she needed. This absence resonates throughout Marceline's relationships. It influences her bond with Princess Bubblegum, her cautious openness, and her difficulty trusting others fully. Marceline's mother is not simply a missing character. She is a structural presence that defines the shape of Marceline's emotional life. From Hunson's perspective, the unknown mother represents a connection that remains unresolved. Hunson does not discuss her. He does not reference her in a way that provides clarity. This absence suggests that the loss or separation was painful even for him. His avoidance of the subject reveals that her memory lies in a part of his past that he cannot navigate easily. His emotional limitations prevent him from expressing grief or regret, but his behavior reveals that he understands that the relationship had consequences. His later attempts to connect with Marceline feel clumsy but genuine. These attempts reflect guilt and the desire to repair a bond he allowed to deteriorate. Marceline's mother remains a silent force in that effort. Her influence echoes through Hunson's desire to understand Marceline better, even if he cannot articulate the reasons behind that desire. The unknown mother stands as a figure shaped by implications rather than exposition. Her identity, while undefined, is felt in Marceline's heart, in Hunson's failures and growth, and in the thematic structure of Adventure Time itself. She symbolizes humanity's resilience and emotional depth. She embodies the quiet strength that carried Marceline through the harshest years of her early life. She represents the bridge between the chaotic Nightosphere and the mortal world. Her life, though unseen, holds profound narrative weight. Through her absence, the story deepens its exploration of identity, loss, love, and the struggle to reconcile different worlds within a single person. Marceline's mother remains a mystery, not because her story lacks importance, but because her silence allows the narrative to focus on the emotional consequences of her existence. She shapes characters across centuries. She marks the point where Hunson stepped outside cosmic duty and allowed himself to change. She defines the emotional foundation of Marceline's journey. Through these contributions, she becomes one of the most important unseen figures in Adventure Time, revealing that even in silence, her impact resonates across dimensions. Hunson Abadeer's role as a father is one of the most complicated and revealing parts of his entire existence. It exposes gaps in his understanding, highlights the tension between his cosmic nature and personal responsibility, and reveals a side of him that the Nightosphere alone could never shape. Yet before one can understand how he failed, learned, adapted, and eventually grew, it is essential to understand the world in which Marceline was raised during her earliest years. Fatherhood for Hunson was not a matter of raising a child in a safe household. It happened in an environment marked by trauma, scarcity, and instability. A landscape still recovering from the ruin that reshaped humanity. His journey as a father begins in the ruins, and those ruins form the emotional backdrop against which every decision, misstep, and fragment of care must be understood. Marceline's early childhood unfolded during a time when humanity was fractured. Settlements were small, resources were inconsistent, and danger existed around every corner. Survivors navigated a world that no longer adhered to the boundaries that once protected them. Mutated creatures roamed through forgotten cities. Food shortages forced people to travel constantly. Illness spread easily. In this environment, Marceline's mother served as the stabilizing force. She understood the landscape and knew how to adapt. Marceline relied on her for safety, structure, and emotional support. When Hunson appeared during this period, he emerged not as a conventional father, but as an outsider entering a fragile world. Hunson did not grow up in the mortal realm, so he never developed the instincts needed to understand human needs. He did not recognize hunger, fatigue, or fear in the ways humans experience them. He approached situations with the logic of the Nightosphere, relying on instinctual authority and cosmic confidence. His perspective, shaped by a dimension where essence replaces food and contracts replace spoken promises, was not compatible with the needs of a human child. This dissonance shaped his earliest interactions with Marceline. He did not understand how to comfort her, support her, or help her feel safe. To him, these concerns did not exist within the framework of how beings survive. In the Nightosphere, fear is a basic condition. In the human world, fear is something a parent must ease. When Hunson entered Marceline's life during her earliest years, he likely believed that his presence alone provided protection. In his mind, his power made threats irrelevant. If danger approached, he could simply erase it. But protecting a child involves far more than eliminating threats. It requires awareness, gentleness, emotional listening, and sensitivity to vulnerability. These were not traits Hunson developed naturally. His power shaped his identity in ways that predisposed him to overlook the small details of care. Even when he tried, his efforts often manifested in overwhelming ways. A gesture meant to show strength might have frightened Marceline. An attempt to help might have caused chaos. These moments would not have been malicious. They would have been the consequence of a being with cosmic influence trying to navigate the emotional world of a young child. This mismatch is a defining aspect of his early fatherhood. Canon supports this interpretation by showing that Marceline remembers him as frightening, yet not absent. She has memories that indicate contact, but not warmth. She was scared not because he hated her, but because he did not know how to shape himself into someone a child could approach confidently. He carried himself with energy that reflected the Nightosphere, a realm where chaos is the norm, and emotional nuance is not required. His interactions lacked the sensitivity that Marceline needed, particularly during a period when the world around her was already overwhelming. Another key aspect of this period is the emotional distance between Hunson and Marceline's mother. Their worlds were incompatible. The human world demanded tenderness, patience, and caution. The Nightosphere demanded authority, decisiveness, and force. These differences created a divide in parenting philosophies so vast that it could not be reconciled easily. Marceline's mother likely understood that Hunson was not capable of providing the kind of presence Marceline required. Hunson likely believed that the hardships of the world were simply part of existence, and that Marceline's mother was too protective. This fundamental difference in expectations would have created tension, leading to Hunson's inconsistent involvement. Despite this, Hunson did care in his own way. His attempts may have been clumsy, but they were genuine. Even within the limits of his emotional vocabulary, he felt something for Marceline that he did not feel for others. This is evident in his behavior centuries later. He shows interest in her life, excitement in seeing her, and a desire to be part of her world, even when that desire is misdirected. These later traits reflect the seeds planted during her childhood. Even though he failed to understand how to support her, the fact that he tried at all is significant. Beings of cosmic power do not tire themselves with emotional efforts unless they feel compelled by a connection that matters. The world around Marceline during her early years also shaped Hunson's decisions. The physical dangers of the land after the war were unlike anything Hunson had seen. He was accustomed to a dimension where power defines survival, not environmental scarcity. He did not understand sickness as humans experience it. He did not understand hunger in the way mortals suffer. When he saw his daughter struggling with these issues, he could not interpret them correctly. He may have attempted solutions that made perfect sense in the context of the Nightosphere, only to confuse or frighten Marceline. His lack of understanding was not rooted in indifference. It was rooted in the fact that he had never lived in a world where physical vulnerability existed. One of the most crucial aspects of Hunson's early fatherhood is the contrast between his intentions and the consequences of his actions. He intended to show care. He intended to provide safety. He intended to strengthen, not weaken, Marceline. But each intention was filtered through his distorted understanding of the human world. Emotional conflict arises when actions cause harm despite good intentions. Marceline's early fear of her father stems from this conflict. She wanted connection, but his presence destabilized her fragile environment. Hunson wanted to help, but he could not understand how his actions created distress. Their relationship began with this emotional mismatch, and it shaped their dynamic for centuries. The moment that defines Hunson's early fatherhood more than anything is Marceline's separation from her mother. Although Canon does not describe this moment directly, it provides emotional depth through Marceline's memories and relationships. Her mother's absence forced Marceline into survival mode. Her emotions hardened, her defenses rose. She learned to rely on herself. Hunson was not present to fill the emotional void. His responsibilities in the Nightosphere kept him distant. Even if he wanted to support her, he did not know how. The crucial years following her mother's disappearance were marked by loneliness and fear that shaped Marceline's identity permanently. Hunson's failure to be present during this period became one of the unspoken tragedies of their relationship. When seen through this lens, Hunson's early fatherhood is defined not by malice, but by incompatibility. He was a cosmic being, trying to raise a half-human child in a world he could not understand. His mistakes were products of his nature, not reflections of ill intent. This does not erase the impact of those mistakes, but it clarifies their origin. His failures created emotional wounds in Marceline that took centuries to mend. They influenced her relationships, her sense of self, and her reactions to vulnerability. Yet these failures also shaped Hunson. He learned from them slowly, gradually developing a sense of responsibility that evolved far beyond the chaotic energy of the Nightosphere. Centuries later, when Marceline becomes independent and powerful in her own right, Hunson interacts with her differently. He respects her autonomy. He seeks her approval in ways that reveal discomfort with vulnerability. He attempts to be supportive through gifts, visits, and actions that reflect his limited understanding of emotional nuance. Each attempt shows that he views Marceline differently from all other beings in the multiverse. She is not simply his daughter. She represents a connection that transcends his nature. This evolution reflects the quiet influence of fatherhood long after the early years. Even though he never mastered emotional expression, he learned patterns of behavior that show care. This learning process reveals that fatherhood changed him, even if it did not transform him entirely. Fatherhood does not operate in a vacuum. It shapes and is shaped by the environment, responsibilities, and emotional capacities of the parent. Hunson entered fatherhood unprepared, living between two worlds that demanded incompatible forms of attention. He lacked the tools to succeed. He lacked the understanding to adapt, yet he tried, and those attempts reveal a layer of complexity that adds depth to his character. The story of his early fatherhood is a story of failure, learning, distance, and attempts at connection that never fully bridged the emotional gap he created. But it is also a story of quiet resilience, both for him and for Marceline. His journey as a father continues long after these early years, and future chapters will explore how he evolves, how Marceline responds, and how their relationship becomes one of the most poignant dynamics in Adventure Time. But to understand that evolution, one must recognize how hard the beginning truly was. Hunson Abadeer became a father in a world he could not understand, to a child he loved but could not protect in the ways she needed. His story as a parent begins with struggle, but it does not end there. It becomes one of the most complex emotional arcs in the entire mythology of the show. Hunson Abadeer's absence during Marceline's formative years is one of the most emotionally charged elements of Adventure Time's hidden history. The story never presents a single explicit moment where he decides to leave, nor does it give a direct explanation for why he was not there when Marceline needed him most. Yet the emotional tone of their relationship, combined with the metaphysics of the Nightosphere and the context of the world after the war, provides enough canon-grounded material to understand why Hunson ended up separated from his daughter. His absence is not the product of indifference. It is the result of layered contradictions that define his nature. To explain why he left Marceline behind, one must look at his responsibility to the Nightosphere, his inability to function in the human world, his emotional limitations, and the circumstances that forced the separation. It begins with a basic truth about Hunson's existence. He is not a citizen of the human world. He is not even a creature of U. He belongs to a dimension that requires a ruler at all times. The Nightosphere cannot function without someone who embodies its laws, enforces its contracts, and anchors its chaotic energy. Canon shows that the realm responds directly to Hunson's presence. When he enters the mortal world, he leaves behind a dimension that depends on him as its stabilizing force. If he remained outside the Nightosphere for too long, the realm would descend into disorder. Creatures that rely on structure would revolt. Contracts would break. The flow of essence would spiral out of control. Hunson's responsibilities were not optional. They were essential to the balance of an entire dimension. This alone created a barrier between him and sustained fatherhood. Yet responsibility alone does not fully explain his absence. Hunson had the power to visit the human world. He could enter it, interact with Marceline, and provide at least some level of support. The deeper reason lies in his overwhelming incompatibility with the world she lived in. When Marceline was a child, the human world was fragile, unpredictable, and emotionally raw. People were still recovering from the collapse of civilization. Communities survived through caution and cooperation. Marceline's mother understood these dynamics instinctively. Hunson did not. His presence disrupted environments rather than stabilizing them. When he visited Marceline during her childhood, his energy did not blend with the world. It clashed with it. Hunson's form carries the essence of the Nightosphere. He radiates a presence that can frighten mortals even when he does not intend to. Marceline was still young during the years following the war. Her emotions were unguarded. Her senses were not yet familiar with the strangeness of magic. When Hunson appeared, she felt his energy through instinct, not understanding. His presence, shaped by cosmic authority and demonic force, overwhelmed her senses. Even if his intentions were pure, his nature frightened her. He lacked the awareness needed to adjust his behavior. His instinct was to be himself, but being himself was incompatible with the emotional needs of a child growing up in a collapsed world. The tension between presence and fear created a cycle. Every time Hunson appeared, Marceline's fear grew, and every time her fear grew, Hunson felt more uncertain and more likely to withdraw. Hunson had never navigated human emotion. He did not know how to respond to fear with tenderness. In the Nightosphere, fear serves a purpose. It motivates, organizes, and creates structure. In the human world, fear requires comfort. Hunson did not understand how to comfort a child. He approached fatherhood through authority, not empathy. When authority produced distress instead of security, he had no tools left to rely on. This emotional mismatch intersects with another truth. Hunson was not prepared for fatherhood. He did not grow up with parents. He did not witness the process of raising a child. He did not understand the developmental needs of mortals. The Nightosphere does not teach its ruler how to nurture, guide, or bond. It teaches how to manage, enforce, and maintain balance. Hunson entered fatherhood from a position of total inexperience. His raw power made him effective in battles and negotiations, but useless in the delicate work of raising a young, half-human child. When Marceline's mother attempted to shield Marceline from his more chaotic traits, Hunson likely interpreted it as emotional distance rather than guidance. Their co-parenting dynamic fractured because neither shared a common understanding of childhood. Marceline's mother operated through compassion, patience, and survival instinct. Hunson operated through cosmic authority, efficiency, and a belief that strength solves everything. Their incompatibility made consistent co-parenting impossible. The separation between them eventually deepened, whether through physical distance, disagreement, or the simple reality that their worlds could not overlap for long. When Marceline's mother disappeared from Marceline's life, Hunson was not positioned to step in seamlessly. He did not understand what had happened. He did not know how to process her mother's absence. He could not compensate for the emotional void her loss created. Marceline needed someone who could nurture her, guide her, and comfort her through the trauma that followed. Hunson lacked these abilities completely. This leads to a difficult truth. Hunson left Marceline behind not because he wanted to, but because he realized he could not give her what she needed. He could not help her. His presence caused confusion and fear. His absence caused loneliness. But loneliness was something Marceline could survive in the human world. Fear caused by a demonic cosmic being could not be overcome so easily. Hunson, in his own limited way, understood this. He could not articulate it. He could not express it, but he acted on it. The decision to leave Marceline behind was not a clean decision, nor was it a moment of clarity. It was a gradual consequence that formed from repeated failures to connect, repeated disruptions to Marceline's environment, and repeated misunderstandings of what she needed. Another layer of complexity lies in how Hunson perceives time. For immortal beings, time unfolds differently. Months blur, years shrink, centuries compress into rhythms of responsibility. Hunson may not have understood how long he remained absent. In his mind, what felt like a manageable span could have been decades. For a child, those decades defined a life. This disconnect created a gap he could never close. When he eventually tried to reconnect with Marceline, she had already formed defenses. Her identity had already hardened through loneliness, survival, and the slow echo of her mother's absence. Hunson returned to a daughter who had learned to live without him. She saw him not as a guardian, but as a reminder of a world she had outgrown. The separation between them hardened through emotional momentum. Marceline interpreted his absence as abandonment. Hunson interpreted Marceline's fear as rejection. Neither communicated with the other in ways that could bridge the divide. Their worlds drifted apart because neither had the capacity to navigate the emotional complexity required to stay together. The human world moved forward in time. The Nightosphere remained timeless. Marceline grew, suffered, explored, and discovered new connections. Hunson returned to his responsibilities, unable to see the damage that his absence created. It is essential to recognize another factor. The Nightosphere does not allow its ruler to leave permanently. Even if Hunson wanted to raise Marceline, he could not remain outside his dimension long enough to do so. Holding power in the Nightosphere means serving as the anchor for its chaos. If Hunson had stayed in the human world full time, the dimension would have slipped into disorder. The creatures within it would have grown uncontrollable. Contracts would have broken. Reality would have warped. His absence from the Nightosphere would have caused suffering on a massive scale. Hunson understood this responsibility in ways Marceline could not. She saw his disappearance as abandonment. He saw it as duty. This conflict between cosmic duty and personal responsibility shaped the fracture in their relationship. Hunson never chose between the Nightosphere and Marceline. The choice was made by the nature of his existence. To keep the dimension stable, he had to remain within it. To protect Marceline emotionally, he had to be present for her. These two obligations could not coexist. Hunson lacked the emotional intelligence to communicate this conflict, so he simply vanished. The separation was not a decision. It was an inevitability. One world needed him to survive, and the other needed him to grow. He could not provide for both. He chose the world he governed because the consequences of abandoning it were catastrophic. The result was a wound that only healing centuries later could address. This separation shaped both of them. Marceline developed independence. She found music, adventure, and identity. She built a life from scraps of lost civilization and emotional echoes. She grew into a powerful figure who could navigate her mixed heritage. Hunson, in contrast, developed caution. He learned to approach Marceline differently in later centuries. He learned to restrain his overwhelming energy. He learned to offer gifts, respect her space, and honor her autonomy. These changes reveal that leaving Marceline behind was not something he dismissed. It weighed on him, even if he did not express it. The emotional truth is simple. Hunson left Marceline behind because he did not know how to stay. The world she lived in was too fragile for his presence. The role he served in the Nightosphere demanded his attention. The emotional skills he needed were beyond his understanding. The gap between their worlds was too wide. He could not bridge it. He could only watch from a distance, return sporadically, and eventually face the consequences of a choice that was never entirely his. His later efforts to reconnect show that leaving her behind was not an act of neglect. It was an act shaped by cosmic boundaries, emotional inexperience, and the collapse of the world they inhabited. The separation became a defining wound for both father and daughter, but it also set the stage for the slow rebuilding of trust that defines some of the most meaningful moments in their later lives. Hunson's absence created pain, but it also created the conditions through which Marceline developed the resilience and depth that make her one of the most complex characters in Adventure Time. The long stretch of time between Marceline's childhood and her eventual reconnection with Hunson Abadeer represents one of the most important emotional eras in their shared history. These years are not described directly in Canon, but their consequences shape both characters in clear and measurable ways. The distance between them was not empty. It was filled with memories, misunderstandings, adaptation, responsibility, and the slow shifting of identity across centuries. This chapter explores the emotional reality of that distance, grounded entirely within the boundaries of Adventure Time's canon and the psychological landscape it creates. To understand this era, one must begin with the simplest fact. Marceline and Hunson did not communicate for a very long time. Their separation began during Marceline's youth, after the disappearance of her mother and the collapse of any stable connection between the two worlds they belonged to. Marceline lived in the mortal realm, travelling across ruins, abandoned cities, and growing kingdoms. Hunson returned to the Nightosphere, performing his duties as ruler. Their lives moved forward separately, shaped by the environments that defined them. This physical distance created emotional distance, and emotional distance eventually became identity. For Marceline, these years were marked by survival. Her early life was filled with wandering, scavenging, learning, and coping with loneliness. Her mixed heritage placed her between worlds. She did not belong entirely with humans, who were afraid of the supernatural. She did not belong in demonic realms, which would have overwhelmed her with their energy. She occupied a space between identities, which forced her to cultivate independence early in life. This independence became one of her most defining traits. Over the centuries, she learned not only how to survive, but how to create meaning within the loneliness she carried. This period shaped her emotional vocabulary. She learned to express herself not through parental relationships, but through music, which became both her memory archive and her emotional outlet. Music allowed her to process loneliness, loss, humor, anger, and love in ways that no conversation could offer. The years of distance from her father strengthened this reliance on self-expression. She crafted songs from the remnants of memory, turning emotional fragments into something she could hold on to. These years also shaped her relationship with trust. Without parents, without a stable home, and without a community that shared her nature, she built protective layers around her emotional world. She learned to love others carefully, to keep vulnerability guarded, and to avoid relying too heavily on anyone. Even centuries later, her interactions with Princess Bubblegum and other figures are influenced by the fear of losing stability again. This fear was born during the years of distance with Hunson. Her father's absence became the emotional blueprint for relationships, teaching her that the people she cared about could vanish without explanation. Understanding these years from Hunson's perspective requires a different lens. Hunson lived in a world without time pressure. His realm did not operate on mortal timelines. He did not age. His duties formed a cycle that repeated endlessly. Contracts were enforced. Disputes were resolved. Chaos was stabilized. Days and years blurred together. Within this structure, he may not have fully grasped the progression of time in the mortal world. To him, Marceline might still have felt close in memory, even when centuries passed. This does not lessen the impact of his absence, but it reveals why he may not have understood the severity of the emotional gap he created. During these years, Hunson remained the ruler of the Nightosphere. This role shaped his entire existence. He maintained order, enforced laws, and controlled the flow of essence throughout the dimension. His responsibilities were constant. His authority had no breaks. His identity was tied to a position that did not allow long-term absence. Survival of the Nightosphere depended on his presence. Even if he had wanted to visit Marceline more frequently, cosmic obligation prevented it. He could leave only for brief periods, and even those visits caused destabilization if he remained outside too long. Yet despite these limitations, Hunson did not forget Marceline. His rare appearances in later Canon show a figure who misses his daughter in his own distorted way. He acts excited to see her. He shows pride in her strength. He displays interest in her life. These behavioral patterns suggest that during the years apart, Marceline remained emotionally relevant to him. He simply lacked the ability to reach her. His emotional limitations prevented him from expressing regret or longing. But his actions imply that these feelings developed slowly over time. The years of distance shaped him too. Hunson does not grow emotionally in the way humans do. His development is slow, measured in cosmic rhythms rather than mortal seasons. Yet the absence of Marceline forced him to confront something rare for beings like him. He felt the weight of responsibility combined with personal connection. He learned that not all bonds can be maintained through power. The Nightosphere taught him authority. Marceline taught him vulnerability. The distance forced him to consider emotions that did not align with his nature. These seeds grew quietly over centuries. One of the defining aspects of these years is the asymmetry in how each experienced the separation. Marceline felt abandonment. Hunson felt duty. Marceline lived in the aftermath of a collapsed world, struggling to define her identity. Hunson lived in a realm that required constant attention, unable to act on emotional impulses. Marceline's loneliness was raw and immediate. Hunson's regret was slow and unspoken. These mismatched experiences made reconciliation difficult later in life. During these years, Marceline's understanding of Hunson hardened into a specific emotional truth. She believed he left willingly. She believed he did not want to be part of her life. She internalized the idea that she was better off alone. These beliefs shaped her relationships with others. She approached friendships with caution. She avoided full vulnerability for long stretches of time. Even when she formed strong bonds, a part of her held back. This self-protective instinct can be traced directly to the emotional foundation created by Hunson's absence. Meanwhile, Hunson formed a different emotional truth. He believed Marceline was strong enough to thrive without constant supervision. In his mind, survival was a matter of strength, not emotional support. He interpreted Marceline's resilience as proof that she did not need the gentle presence he was incapable of providing. He misunderstood human development, assuming that his absence caused less harm than it did. His cosmic perspective blinded him to the nuance of emotional growth. He saw her independence as confirmation that she no longer needed him. This misunderstanding reinforced the distance. Even though they lived separate lives, the emotional bond between them did not disappear. It changed shape. It became something dormant, not broken. The potential for reconnection remained, but the fear on Marceline's side and the uncertainty on Hunson's side prevented either from making a move. Their mutual inaction preserved the distance for centuries. These years were also shaped by external changes in the world. Marceline witnessed the rise of kingdoms, the creation of societies, and the emergence of magical forces that reshaped the land. She became part of these shifts, forming connections with creatures and institutions that gave her life structure. Hunson, confined to the Nightosphere, observed the mortal world from afar. Canon does not depict him watching Marceline directly, but his later behavior implies that he remained aware of her growth. He showed recognition of her strength, awareness of her relationships, and a sense of pride that indicates sustained interest throughout the years. The distance between them created emotional inertia. The longer they remained apart, the harder it became to reach out. Marceline feared disappointment. Hunson feared rejection. Each believed the gap was too wide to bridge. This mutual hesitation preserved the emotional freeze between them. Yet the bond persisted quietly, waiting for circumstances to push them back together. One of the most important aspects of this era is the way it shaped their eventual reunion. The years of distance created emotional pressure that needed release. When they finally interacted again, their relationship erupted in conflict mixed with affection. The pent-up emotions revealed how deeply each had been affected. Without the years of distance, their reunion would have been simple. With them, it became meaningful. It became a reflection of centuries of unspoken fear, regret, and longing. Another important detail is that the years of distance allowed Marceline to define who she was without interference. She became powerful. She became independent. She formed her own identity separate from her father's influence. This growth enabled her to confront him later from a position of stability rather than vulnerability. The distance hurt her, but it also gave her the space she needed to evolve into someone capable of setting boundaries and demanding respect. For Hunson, these centuries allowed for internal change that, while slow, affected his later interactions. He learned discretion. He learned to restrain his chaotic energy when approaching his daughter. He learned to hold back expressions of authority that once defined his behavior. These changes did not erase his flaws, but they softened them. The distance did not break him. Emotionally, it reshaped him subtly, preparing him for the moment when he and Marceline would reconnect. The years of distance represent a long emotional winter between father and daughter. They lived separate lives, shaped by incompatible worlds and mismatched emotional understandings. Yet these years did not erase their bond. They transformed it, hardened it, complicated it, and prepared it for the evolution that would come later. The distance was painful, but it was not empty. It was a period of growth, survival, misunderstanding, and quiet reflection, forming the foundation for everything that follows in their relationship. The moment Hunson Abadeer re-enters Marceline's life is not a single dramatic event, but the culmination of centuries of emotional drift. Their reunion feels sudden in the timeline of Adventure Time, yet beneath that moment lies a long build-up shaped by growth, distance, and the slow gravitational pull between two beings connected through blood, loss, and unresolved history. This chapter examines how their worlds converge again, why the reunion unfolds the way it does, and how Canon signals that both characters have changed enough to finally face each other. The emotional truth of their reunion rests not on spectacle, but on recognition, restraint, and the quiet steps each takes toward understanding. To begin, one must understand that Marceline is no longer the child Hunson knew. By the time they meet again, she has lived through eras of transformation. She has wandered, formed bonds, lost them, created art, argued, loved, and matured in ways Hunson never witnessed. She is her own person, shaped by human emotion and vampire immortality. She carries scars of abandonment, but she also carries strength gained through centuries of survival. She no longer needs a parent in the traditional sense. Her independence is solid. The years hardened her, not in a cruel way, but in a way that forged resilience. This maturity is important, because without it, any interaction with Hunson would have overwhelmed her. Her reunion with him becomes possible precisely because she has grown into someone capable of setting boundaries. Hunson has changed too, though his evolution is slower and less visible. In the Nightosphere, time flows in a loop of obligation and authority. Centuries pass without noticeable change, but subtle shifts take root in a being who operates through cosmic rhythms. He has had time to reflect, even if reflection is not something he consciously seeks. His memories of Marceline linger, shaped by guilt he does not know how to articulate. He recognizes that he has no relationship with her. He acknowledges this failure silently. These seeds of awareness influence his later behavior. The Hunson who reunites with Marceline is still chaotic, powerful, and flawed, but he approaches her with restraint uncommon for beings of his nature. Their reunion begins not through emotional initiative, but through circumstance. Hunson's return to the mortal realm is triggered by events outside simple, relational desire. Yet when he emerges, his attention gravitates toward Marceline immediately. This instinct shows that despite the centuries of distance, she remains central in his consciousness. His excitement during their reunion is genuine, but it is filtered through his limited understanding of human emotion. He sees her not as a child he abandoned, but as a powerful individual he can now proudly interact with. He misinterprets strength as proof that she no longer carries the pain of his absence. This misunderstanding shapes the emotional difficulty of their Palm reunion. Marceline's reaction to seeing Hunson again emerges from a complex inner landscape. She does not hate him, she does not fear him the way she once did, but she does carry layers of unresolved resentment, sadness, and confusion. Seeing him again activates emotions that remain dormant for centuries. These emotions are not simple. They are the result of childhood wounds revisited by adult awareness. Marceline feels obligated to maintain control over the interaction because she understands that Hunson does not. She approaches him cautiously, not because she expects harm, but because she expects misunderstanding. This defensive position is rooted entirely in Canon and reflects her established patterns of behavior. When their interaction begins, the emotional gaps between them become visible immediately. Hunson treats Marceline as if no time has passed. Marceline treats Hunson as a stranger she remembers intimately. He expresses pride without acknowledging the pain he caused. She maintains guarded composure to prevent old wounds from reopening. This emotional imbalance creates tension, but it also highlights the complexity of their relationship. Neither knows how to bridge the gap. Both want connection, but each approaches it through incompatible emotional languages. Hunson's behavior during their reconnection reveals several important traits. He respects Marceline's independence. He listens more than he did in the past. He does not impose himself on her environment without invitation. These actions suggest that he has learned, however slowly, that his power must be tempered when dealing with Marceline. This restraint is subtle but significant. It shows that their centuries of separation influenced him, not by transforming his nature, but by shaping his awareness of what Marceline needs. Marceline, on the other hand, demonstrates emotional intelligence that evolved long after her childhood. She communicates boundaries, even if indirectly. She does not allow Hunson to treat her as someone who needs protection. She asserts her identity. She shows irritation, humor, and vulnerability in balanced ways. These traits show that she is not approaching him as a frightened child. She is approaching him as an adult attempting to reconcile with a parent who never learned how to parent. This maturity allows her to navigate the reunion with clarity rather than overwhelming emotion. The world of Oo plays a role in shaping their reconnection. Marceline is part of a community. She has friends, allies, and a life filled with creative expression and chosen bonds. This support system provides emotional grounding. She does not face Hunson from a place of isolation. She faces him from a place of belonging. This context allows her to challenge him when his behavior becomes intrusive. She does not fear losing him because she never fully had him. She fears losing control over her identity, but she has grown strong enough to protect it. This strength makes the reunion less about his power and more about their emotional positions. Hunson's presence in Oo also highlights another aspect of his evolution. He has learned to navigate the mortal realm with slightly more restraint. His interactions with Finn, Jake, and others show that he recognizes social dynamics, even if imperfectly. He behaves with a sense of performative normalcy, attempting to act like a father reconnecting with his daughter. This attempt is flawed but sincere. It reveals an awareness that relationships require more than authority. For someone of his nature, this awareness is a form of growth. The emotional highlight of their reunion is the shift from avoidance to recognition. At some point, both characters acknowledge the emotional distance between them. Hunson realizes that he cannot simply step back into Marceline's life as though nothing happened. Marceline realizes that Hunson's failures were not entirely rooted in apathy. These realizations do not erase the pain, but they create space for a new dynamic. This space becomes the foundation of their later relationship. Their reunion also reveals a subtle truth. Marceline does not seek a traditional father figure. She seeks closure. She seeks understanding. She seeks acknowledgement of her pain, even if Hunson cannot express it verbally. Hunson, meanwhile, seeks connection. He seeks a role in her life that does not require emotional fluency he does not possess. The harmony they achieve is not perfect unity. It is mutual acceptance. Marceline accepts Hunson as he is, with flaws, ignorance, and cosmic strangeness. Hunson accepts Marceline as someone he cannot control but can respect. The reunion also marks the beginning of Hunson's involvement in Marceline's adult life. He visits occasionally, offers help when asked, and shows pride in her achievements. He is not consistent, but he is present enough to reveal that their relationship is no longer frozen in childhood. They have entered a new stage where they can interact without reopening old wounds constantly. This transformation reflects Canon accurately. Hunson becomes a recurring presence, not a central one, and Marceline learns to incorporate him into her world in balanced ways. Their reunion holds another layer of significance. It reflects the broader themes of Adventure Time. The series values reconciliation, growth, and the idea that imperfect relationships can still hold meaning. Hunson and Marceline embody this theme. Their connection is messy, uncertain, and full of emotional pitfalls, yet it evolves through patience and mutual adaptation. Neither becomes something they are not. Marceline does not erase her pain. Hunson does not transform into a perfect parent. Instead, they learn how to relate to each other through honesty and tolerance, creating a relationship grounded in acceptance rather than expectation. The emotional truth of their reunion lies in recognition. Hunson recognizes Marceline as someone whose strength developed without him. Marceline recognizes Hunson as someone incapable of meeting her emotional needs in childhood, but willing to try in adulthood. This mutual recognition allows them to build a relationship rooted in the present rather than haunted by the past. Their worlds intersect again not through fate or necessity, but through the willingness of both to face each other honestly. Hunson's presence in Marceline's adult life becomes a symbol of emotional evolution. It shows that relationships can grow even after centuries of distance. It shows that forgiveness can exist without forgetting. It shows that parenthood is complicated, especially when cosmic duty intersects with human vulnerability. The reunion does not offer simple resolution. Instead, it offers something far more meaningful. It offers a path forward. By the end of their renewed connection, both father and daughter discover something valuable. Marceline learns that her pain does not define her relationship with Hunson. Hunson learns that connection does not erase his nature, but enhances his understanding of emotional responsibility. Their reunion becomes a moment where their worlds align just enough to foster growth. It is not perfect, but it is real. It is not dramatic, but it is honest. Adventure Time presents this reconciliation as quiet, because quiet moments often carry the deepest truth. Their worlds intersect again, not through cosmic upheaval, but through the slow clearing of emotional fog that separated them for centuries. This intersection becomes the foundation for everything that follows, shaping the later stages of their relationship and deepening the complexity of their characters within the canon of Adventure Time. Hunson Abadeer is one of the most powerful beings in the multiverse, yet his relationship with Marceline reveals a simple truth. Power does not translate into emotional fluency. Authority does not produce empathy. Immortality does not guarantee wisdom. Hunson's love for Marceline exists, but it exists within boundaries shaped by his nature, his duties, and the limits he never learned to overcome. Understanding the limits of his love does not diminish him. It humanizes him in a universe where cosmic beings often lack depth. This chapter examines the shape of Hunson's love, the barriers that constrain it, and how those constraints define his bond with Marceline across centuries. To begin, one must understand what love means for a being like Hunson. In the Nightosphere, emotion does not guide relationships. Structures of power do. Beings relate through dissonance, chaos, and obedience. Attachment is optional. Vulnerability is undesirable. The dimension rewards cunning, ambition, and strength, not tenderness. This environment shaped Hunson's emotional development. He was not taught how to nurture, comfort, or empathize. He learned how to administer a realm where contracts and essence form the foundation of interaction. Love, as mortals experience it, did not exist in his world, yet Hunson does feel attachment. Canon reveals genuine excitement in his voice when he returns to Marceline's life. He demonstrates pride in her accomplishments. He respects her choices. These behaviors are not performative. They reflect real emotion, filtered through a nature that never learned the subtleties of care. His love exists, but it never expresses itself in the ways Marceline needed. This mismatch forms the heart of their conflict. Marceline grew up with human emotional expectations. Even as a half-demon, her human side shaped her understanding of connection. She wanted responsiveness, attention, and emotional presence. Hunson did not know how to provide any of those things. One of the clearest limits of Hunson's love is his perception of strength. To Hunson, strength is the ultimate form of care. He believes that by demonstrating power, asserting authority, or creating stability, he is protecting the people he cares about. In his mind, a father who is strong keeps dangers away. A ruler who is strong keeps a realm functional. The connection between strength and love is natural to him. But for Marceline, strength did not translate into comfort. She did not want to witness overwhelming power. She wanted reassurance. She wanted calm presence. She wanted empathy. Hunson equated power with protection because that was the only framework he knew. This limit prevented him from understanding why his attempts at care frightened her. Another limit of his love lies in his inability to perceive emotional nuance. Hunson does not understand subtle cues. He misreads silence as indifference. He misinterprets boundaries as rejection. This is evident when he returns to Marceline's life with cheerful confidence. He assumes she will be thrilled to see him. This assumption reveals his emotional blind spots. He does not register the pain his absence caused. He does not sense the tension in her voice or the guarded posture she maintains. His emotional limits come from his nature as a cosmic being, but they still influence how his love reaches Marceline. One of the most significant limits of Hunson's love is his relationship with responsibility. His duties in the Nightosphere dictate the shape of his life. He cannot abandon his realm, nor can he neglect the continuous flow of contracts and essence that define its structure. These responsibilities limit his ability to be physically present in Marceline's life. Even if he wished to remain in the mortal world longer, doing so would destabilize the Nightosphere. The realm would suffer, and its creatures would spiral into chaos. This conflict places Hunson in a position where love becomes secondary to duty, not because he desires it, but because cosmic systems require it. His love is constrained by forces larger than personal desire. The limits of his love also manifest through his flawed attempts at connection. When Hunson tries to bond with Marceline, he does so through grand gestures or chaotic involvement. He attempts to provide gifts or entertainment without understanding their emotional significance. These gestures reveal affection, but they also reveal a lack of awareness about Marceline's needs. He tries too hard in ways that do not resonate with her. He fails to meet her emotional energy, not because he wants to fail, but because he does not know another way. This limit shapes their dynamic profoundly. Marceline often sees his actions as disruptive, while Hunson sees them as meaningful effort. Hunson's love is also limited by a fundamental fear. A being of his nature does not fear physical harm, but he does fear emotional vulnerability. The idea of disappointing Marceline frightens him in ways he cannot articulate. He approaches emotional topics cautiously. When Marceline expresses criticism, he grows defensive or confused. This defensiveness stems from insecurity. He does not understand how to fix emotional wounds, so he retreats into humor or bravado. His love is genuine, but it is guarded by fear of inadequacy. This fear limits his ability to express remorse or vulnerability. Marceline, on the other hand, carries emotional expectations inherited from her human side. She seeks validation, empathy, and acknowledgement of past wounds. These needs clash with Hunson's limits. He cannot easily say he is sorry. He cannot articulate emotional insight. He cannot process grief in the way she does. When these needs meet his limits, conflict emerges. Marceline sees his behavior as evasive. Hunson sees her needs as confusing. Both perspectives are valid within their respective emotional frameworks. Their relationship is shaped not by a lack of love, but by incompatible emotional languages. Canon provides glimpses of Hunson's attempts to understand Marceline's world. He visits her in U. He interacts with her friends. He respects her boundaries more than he did during her youth. These behaviors reveal that he is learning, slowly and imperfectly. His growth is limited, but it exists. His love pushes him to change, even when change is difficult for him. The limits of his love do not prevent him from trying. They simply restrict how effectively he can respond. Marceline eventually recognizes these limits. She learns to stop expecting her father to become something he cannot be. She does not lower her standards. She adjusts her perspective. She accepts that Hunson loves her in the only ways he knows how. This acceptance does not erase the pain of the past, but it allows her to build a healthier relationship with him. She stops seeking emotional perfection and instead begins seeking understanding. This shift represents one of the most mature aspects of her character development. Hunson's love exists within constraints, but those constraints do not erase its value. His love is not expressed through emotional fluency. It is expressed through presence, pride, and the effort to understand a world he was never meant to navigate. He shows tenderness not through softness, but through respect for Marceline's autonomy. He offers support in the form of stepping aside when necessary. For a cosmic being shaped by authority, these acts require immense emotional effort. One of the most telling signs of the limits of his love is the way he interacts with Marceline during moments of conflict. He does not retaliate with hostility. He becomes confused or subdued. These reactions reveal that her anger matters to him. He is not afraid of harm. He is afraid of losing her more than he already has. This fear shapes his restraint. It pushes him to listen, even when listening challenges his nature. the limits of his love also influence how Marceline sees herself. She learns to balance compassion with caution. She forgives, but she does not forget. She accepts love from others more easily because she understands its fragility. Her father's limited love makes her appreciate relationships that provide emotional clarity. It shapes her capacity to give and receive affection in healthier ways. Through Hunson's failings, she becomes more emotionally intelligent, more self-aware, and more resilient. Hunson's love ultimately becomes meaningful because it is genuine despite its flaws. He cannot express emotions easily, but he feels them deeply in ways he does not always understand. He cannot articulate regret, but he holds it quietly. He cannot provide the parenting Marceline needed as a child, but he provides the respect and quiet pride she values as an adult. His love is real, but it is filtered through a nature that cannot comprehend the full emotional spectrum of mortality. When viewed through this lens, the limits of Hunson's love do not represent failure. They represent adjustment. They represent the challenge of reconciling cosmic responsibility with human emotion. They reveal the beauty of imperfect connection. Marceline does not need her father to be perfect. She needs him to be present in the way he can be. Hunson does not need to become human. He needs to honor the bond he shares with his daughter within the constraints of his identity. The limits of his love form the emotional architecture of their relationship. They define its shape, not its meaning. Through them, Adventure Time reveals a profound truth. Love does not need to be flawless to matter. It can be messy, incomplete, confusing, and still transform lives. It can grow slowly, change subtly, and still create connection. Hunson's love is limited, but it is his. Marceline accepts this not out of resignation, but out of wisdom. She understands that love often arrives imperfectly, and in accepting that truth, she finds peace with a father who never learned how to love in human terms, yet loves her all the same. The Nightosphere is one of the strangest and most iconic dimensions in Adventure Time. A place where chaos takes form, logic bends into spirals, and the boundaries of identity become fluid. It is a void filled with creatures that defy classification, landscapes that shift without reason, and rules that appear contradictory until one recognizes their deeper structure. At the center of this bizarre realm stands Hunson Abadeer. The Nightosphere is not simply a domain he rules. It is a dimension that mirrors his nature, his flaws, his strengths, and his inner contradictions. To understand Hunson more deeply, one must analyze the Nightosphere as a reflection of him. Its features, systems, and energy patterns are not arbitrary. They embody the psychological and cosmic truths of the being who serves as its anchor. The first layer of this reflection lies in the realm's chaotic nature. The Nightosphere is unpredictable, loud, distorted, and filled with creatures that operate through impulses rather than rational structures. On the surface, this chaos seems random, but closer analysis reveals order hidden beneath the disorder. This duality mirrors Hunson. He presents himself as chaotic and spontaneous, yet he follows a consistent internal logic. He enforces rules through contracts. He maintains structure within the realm. He stabilizes the flow of essence. The Nightosphere behaves the same way. It is chaotic from the outside, but internally governed by principles that remain consistent across every depiction. This dual nature becomes especially clear when one considers the way the Nightosphere responds to authority. When Hunson acts within it, creatures obey. They follow his cues without resistance. Their behavior reflects his identity. They are impulsive, mischievous, and often self-interested, qualities that also define Hunson's personality. Yet they also recognize the importance of hierarchy. They know their place. They understand the consequences of violating contracts. This reflects Hunson's balance of playful chaos and firm governance. The Nightosphere is an ecosystem built from the same psychological components that shape its ruler. It thrives on contradiction, embracing both freedom and structure in ways that mirror Hunson's emotional limitations and administrative responsibilities. Another aspect of the Nightosphere reflects Hunson's relationship with power. The realm values strength above all else. The creatures that inhabit it navigate life by testing boundaries. They challenge, push, provoke, and react. Power shifts constantly, not through political strategy, but through displays of dominance. This culture mirrors Hunson's instinctual approach to relationships. He understands strength. He understands authority. He understands the logic of power. These instincts are deeply embedded in the Nightosphere. It is a dimension designed around constant expressions of dominance, because its ruler views the world through those lenses. Yet the Nightosphere also reveals Hunson's capacity for organization. Despite its chaotic appearance, the realm operates under rules that hold cosmic weight. Contracts bind essence. Choices have consequences. Power can be gained or lost through agreements. These systems are not random. They reflect a mind that constructs structure to control chaos. Hunson's creation of contracts shows his desire for boundaries in a world that resists them. This desire for structure emerges from his own need to control the unpredictable instincts of the dimension and the creatures living within it. The realm becomes a canvas where Hunson expresses his internal struggle between chaos and control. Another reflection of Hunson appears in the Nightosphere's humour. The dimension is frightening, but it is also absurd. Its logic bends in comedic ways. Transformations are sudden. Situations are exaggerated. Creatures behave with slapstick unpredictability. This comedic chaos mirrors Hunson's personality. He finds amusement in discomfort. He reacts to tense situations with humour, not malice. He approaches conflict through mischief rather than cruelty. This light-hearted strangeness seeps into the environment he governs. The Nightosphere is frightening but never grim. It is chaotic but never hopeless. It reflects a ruler who finds joy in disorder without descending into pure destruction. Another important connection lies in the physical appearance of the Nightosphere. The dimension shifts constantly. Landscapes warp, structures move, identity becomes fluid. Hunson's own form mirrors this fluidity. He changes shape instinctively. He extends limbs, morphs size, and alters expression effortlessly. His essence is mutable, and the dimension he anchors reflects this mutability. The instability of the Nightosphere is not a flaw. It is a natural extension of Hunson's identity. He does not inhabit a realm shaped by stability. He inhabits a realm shaped by transformation, mirroring his own ability to reshape himself. One of the most revealing reflections lies in how the Nightosphere handles emotion. The dimension does not process emotional experiences the same way the mortal world does. Fear is constant. Anxiety is normal. Confusion is expected. These emotional states do not cause dysfunction. They are the baseline of existence. This emotional landscape mirrors Hunson's own emotional limitations. He does not navigate tension with delicacy. He does not comfort through softness. He exists in a baseline of emotional chaos, where overwhelming energy and blunt expression are normal. The Nightosphere reflects this emotional reality. It is a place where emotional overwhelm is ordinary and where creatures thrive despite constant intensity. The realm's rules also reflect Hunson's communication style. The Nightosphere communicates through extreme gestures rather than subtle signals. Creatures announce intent loudly. Objects behave erratically. Energy surges dramatically. This communication style mirrors Hunson's approach to emotional expression. When he expresses affection, frustration, or pride, he does so intensely rather than subtly. He is never understated. He is never quiet in his emotional presentation. The dimension mirrors this by presenting its emotional atmosphere through overwhelming sensory stimuli. The Nightosphere communicates like its ruler, loudly, chaotically, directly. Another important reflection lies in the realm's moral ambiguity. The Nightosphere is not evil. It is simply strange. It operates according to rules that mortals find frightening, but that make perfect sense within the dimension. Hunson is the same. He is not a villain. He is a cosmic being whose morality operates outside human norms. His decisions often appear cruel because they follow a logic incompatible with mortal emotion. The Nightosphere embodies this cosmic neutrality. It is not defined by malice. It is defined by nature. Creatures behave according to instinct rather than moral intent. This aligns with Hunson's own nature as a being who acts according to cosmic responsibility rather than emotional impulse. One of the most striking reflections appears in the way the Nightosphere interacts with outsiders. When mortals enter the realm, the environment becomes chaotic in response. Objects rebel, creatures swarm, structures distort further. The dimension reacts to foreign presence like a body reacting to infection. Similarly, when Hunson interacts with mortals, his energy disrupts their environment. His presence overwhelms small spaces. His behavior disturbs social dynamics. He is not malicious. He is simply not compatible with mortal environments. The Nightosphere mirrors this incompatibility through its reactions to outsiders. It is a dimension not meant for the fragile or the unprepared. This mirror extends into the way the Nightosphere transforms those who enter it. Mortals who spend time in Nightosphere, the realm begin to reflect its energy. Personalities shift, behavior alters. Reality becomes distorted. This transformation mirrors the effect Hunson has on people. When he enters U, he disrupts normal behavior. He changes the mood. He alters social structure. His influence is not subtle. It reshapes environments. The Nightosphere behaves the same way. It infuses its energy into those who enter, reflecting the transformative power its ruler carries naturally. The realm's bureaucratic structure also reflects Hunson's personality. Despite the chaos, the Nightosphere has an administrative system. Documents exist. Procedures must be followed. Enforcement is strict. This bureaucracy mirrors Hunson's desire to impose order on chaos through contracts and rules. He understands that chaos without structure leads to collapse. The Nightosphere functions because he created an infrastructure capable of channeling chaos into manageable flows. This administrative instinct reveals a side of Hunson that values clarity, even within confusion. Another reflection appears in the realm's relationship with identity. In the Nightosphere, forms shift constantly. Identity is not static. This fluidity mirrors Hunson's own approach to self-expression. He is not attached to one form. He changes shape based on mood, intention, or circumstance. The dimension echoes this neutrality toward identity. It does not enforce strict boundaries. It allows identity to stretch, break, or reform. This echoes the internal flexibility that defines Hunson's cosmic nature. A deeper reflection emerges. when considering the Nightosphere's dependency on its ruler. Without Hunson, the realm becomes unstable. With him, it functions. This dynamic reflects his internal conflict between responsibility and personal desire. The Nightosphere needs him, Marceline does not. This difference shapes his emotional worldview. Being needed defines his existence. Being loved confuses him. The realm anchors his identity because it mirrors his value. It relies on him fully. This dependency reveals why he often prioritizes his duties over emotional relationships. The realm expresses a form of cosmic attachment he understands instinctively. Marceline expresses a form of emotional attachment he struggles to understand. The Nightosphere, in its dependency, reflects the part of Hunson that finds comfort in obligation rather than emotional vulnerability. The dimension also reflects his playful cruelty. The Nightosphere is filled with creatures who enjoy mischief and discomfort. Their antics are not malicious. They are expressions of a culture built around chaotic humour. This mirrors Hunson's interactions with others. He often teases, provokes, or disrupts situations for amusement rather than harm. The realm he governs amplifies these instincts, creating an environment where mischief becomes the primary mode of communication. Finally, the Nightosphere reflects the part of Hunson that Marceline struggles to accept. It embodies the overwhelming power, emotional chaos, and unpredictable nature that once frightened her. Their relationship becomes a journey of accepting this reflection without letting it dominate their bond. As Marceline grows, she learns not to fear the Nightosphere. She learns to navigate its chaos with calm certainty. This maturity symbolizes her acceptance of the parts of Hunson she cannot change. The realm becomes an external metaphor for the reconciliation between father and daughter. Through all these reflections, the Nightosphere reveals the complexity of Hunson Abadeer. It is not merely his home. It is a mirror of his nature, his instincts, his contradictions, and his emotional limitations. Understanding the Nightosphere means understanding him. It shows that chaos and order coexist within him. It reveals that his emotional shortcomings are not flaws of intention, but flaws of structure. And it demonstrates that even in a realm defined by unpredictability, patterns of meaning emerge through the presence of a ruler who embodies contradiction, strength, and a unique form of love. Hunson Abadeer sits at the crossroads between cosmic responsibility and human relationship, an intersection that defines nearly every emotional conflict in his life and every misunderstanding between him and Marceline. To understand him fully, one must examine how his cosmic scale of existence collides with the human scale of consequence. Beings like Hunson experience time, duty, and emotion in a way fundamentally different from mortals. Humans measure life through moments of vulnerability and connection. Hunson measures through cycles of obligation and timeless identity. Yet despite these differences, the consequences of his cosmic nature ripple through Marceline's life in ways that shape her emotional development, identity, and view of relationships. This chapter explores how Hunson's cosmic perspective influences his decisions, and how those decisions carry very human consequences for the daughter who never asked to bridge two incompatible worlds. At the core of Hunson's existence lies his role as ruler of the Nightosphere. The dimension does not function like a kingdom where power may be delegated or shared. It requires a single anchor, a being whose essence stabilizes chaotic energies. Hunson serves as that anchor. This role is not ceremonial. It is essential to the balance of an entire dimension. Without his presence, the Nightosphere would collapse into uncontrolled entropy. Contracts would lose meaning. Creatures would descend into unstructured chaos. essence would circulate unpredictably. This constant requirement shapes Hunson's sense of priority. To him, countless lives depend on his presence in the Nightosphere. Even if he wished to spend long periods in the mortal realm, such absence would destabilize his dimension. His cosmic responsibility overshadows personal desire. Marceline, however, experiences the impact of his absence at a human scale. She feels loss, abandonment, and confusion. She interprets his distance as emotional neglect, not cosmic duty. This misalignment forms one of the central tensions in their relationship. Hunson does not see his actions as abandonment because his perspective does not include the emotional subtleties that define childhood development. Marceline sees his actions as abandonment because she experiences them through the lens of a child who needed consistency. The cosmic scale of his priorities and the human scale of her emotional needs collide in ways neither is equipped to articulate. This conflict becomes clear when considering time. For Hunson, centuries pass with the fluid ease of seasons. His sense of continuity stretches across eras. Emotional reflection unfolds slowly. Regret forms gradually. Humans, however, experience time through urgency. Emotional wounds form quickly. Connections matter intensely. Marceline grows, adapts, and transforms. Hunson remains timeless. This difference means that what feels like a brief absence to Hunson feels like a lifetime to Marceline. She experiences the consequences immediately. He recognizes them only after long reflection. The asymmetry in perception creates an emotional divide that continues to echo into their reunion. Another layer of cosmic scale lies in Hunson's understanding of danger. As a being of immense power, he rarely fears physical harm. Threats that would terrify mortals barely register to him. He views risk through the lens of authority rather than vulnerability. When he interacts with Marceline as a child, he approaches danger with indifference, assuming that any threat can be eliminated. But for her, danger shapes identity and emotional development. Humans form attachments through protection and reassurance. Marceline did not need someone who could destroy her enemies. She needed someone who could comfort her fear. Hunson's cosmic detachment prevented him from understanding this need. His attempts at protection created more anxiety than relief, demonstrating how cosmic perspective can produce human suffering even without malicious intent. Another clash between scales appears in the way Hunson interprets relationships. Cosmic beings often form connections based on utility, power balance, or shared purpose. Emotional depth is rare, not because they are incapable of feeling, but because their lives extend across spans too vast for fragile bonds. When Hunson formed a connection with Marceline's mother, that moment marked one of the few times he stepped outside his cosmic comfort zone. But the relationship existed within a human framework. Humans require consistency, communication, and presence. Hunson required none of these. The incompatibility between their needs created tension that neither could fully understand. His cosmic approach to attachment clashed with her human expectations, producing consequences Marceline would inherit. This inheritance forms one of the most profound examples of cosmic scale producing human consequence. Marceline grows up with an emotional blueprint shaped by the absence of her father. She learns that powerful figures may leave without warning. She learns that love does not guarantee presence. She learns to rely on herself. This self-reliance becomes one of her greatest strengths, but also one of her deepest wounds. Her difficulty trusting others, her caution in relationships, and her guarded emotional nature reflect the consequences of her early experiences. Hunson never intended to teach her these lessons, yet they became part of her identity because of his cosmic limitations. Another important dimension lies in the way Hunson perceives emotion itself. Cosmic beings often experience emotion differently from mortals. Their sense of loss, joy, and connection is filtered through immortality. They do not process grief in the same way. They do not fear the future in the same way. They do not anchor identity through relationships. Hunson experiences emotion through bursts of intensity, followed by long periods of cosmic neutrality. Marceline experiences emotion through consistent presence and emotional clarity. This mismatch creates misunderstandings. When Hunson expresses pride or affection, he assumes the emotion is clear. When Marceline receives these expressions, she often perceives them as confusing or insincere because they lack the subtlety and context she expects. Hunson's cosmic expression of emotion cannot fully meet her human need for depth. This is not a failing of character, it is a limitation of nature. Another reflection of these limitations appears in Hunson's approach to conflict. When confronted with emotional tension, he becomes defensive or humorous. These reactions make sense for a cosmic ruler accustomed to controlling situations. Humor disarms tension in the Nightosphere. Authority resolves disputes. But in human relationships, humor may feel dismissive, and authority may feel intrusive. Marceline often encounters these reactions during their interactions, leading to frustration. Hunson is not avoiding emotion intentionally. He is responding through the only strategies his environment taught him. His cosmic communication style carries human consequences Marceline must navigate. The physical structure of the Nightosphere also illustrates the tension between cosmic and human scales. The dimension operates through rules that reflect Hunson's identity, yet these rules create environments hostile to mortals. When Marceline enters the Nightosphere, she experiences disorientation, confusion, and danger. The realm is not designed for her. Her father's world is cosmic, chaotic, and incompatible with human existence. This incompatibility symbolizes the emotional dynamic between them. Marceline cannot easily occupy Hunson's world, and Hunson cannot easily occupy hers. Their relationship must exist in the overlap between dimensions, not fully within either. Another key detail lies in the way Hunson interprets responsibility. In his mind, his duty to the Nightosphere is not negotiable. It forms the foundation of his existence. Marceline, however, interprets responsibility differently. Her responsibilities arise from personal connections. She protects her friends, her relationships, her sense of identity. While Hunson defines responsibility through cosmic duty, Marceline defines it through emotional ties. This difference explains their divergent priorities and helps clarify why Hunson's absence felt like abandonment to Marceline. She interprets responsibility through care. He interprets it through obligation. One of the most striking examples of cosmic scale producing human consequence occurs when Hunson interacts with Marceline after centuries of absence. He approaches her with enthusiasm, unaware of the emotional damage his absence caused. He is excited to see her, not because he dismisses her pain, but because his cosmic perspective does not prioritize the emotional weight of time. Marceline, in contrast, feels a resurgence of childhood hurt. This moment reveals the core of their dynamic. Hunson feels deeply but slowly. Marceline feels deeply but immediately. Yet, despite these differences, their relationship does not collapse into resentment. Marceline learns to recognize the limits of her father's nature. She understands that he never intended harm. She acknowledges the cosmic scale of his responsibilities. This acceptance allows her to interact with him without expecting him to adopt human emotional norms he cannot internalize. Hunson, in turn, learns to respect Marceline's emotional boundaries. He becomes more careful with his presence, more attentive to her needs, and more willing to adapt within the limits of his nature. These mutual adjustments reveal that cosmic scale does not erase the possibility of connection. It simply requires patience and understanding. Another important consequence of this dynamic is the way Marceline forms relationships with others. Her experience with Hunson teaches her to value emotional clarity, honesty, and stability. She does not seek perfection. She seeks presence. She forms bonds with individuals who ground her emotionally. Her relationships with her friends and with Princess Bubblegum reflect her effort to find stability the Nightosphere never offered. These relationships become central pillars of her identity. They balance the cosmic chaos she inherited from her father. In this way, Hunson's limitations indirectly guide Marceline toward connections that enrich her life. Hunson's cosmic nature also shapes how he views Marceline. He sees her not only as his child, but as a being who has grown into power and independence. His pride in her is genuine. He respects her strength because strength is the language he understands best. He does not view her through the narrow lens of parental authority. He views her through the cosmic lens of potential. This perspective limits his ability to comfort her emotionally, but it enhances his respect for her autonomy. His pride becomes a reflection of his love, expressed through the language of strength rather than tenderness. One of the most profound consequences of the cosmic-human divide is the way their relationship evolves over time. They do not overcome all their differences. They do not erase the past. But they learn to exist together in moments that acknowledge both cosmic scale and human consequence. Their interactions become a blend of humor, awkwardness, affection, and mutual respect. Bonds between beings of different scales rarely reach perfect harmony. Yet in their case, the imperfection itself becomes meaningful. Hunson learns to be present within the limits of his nature. He visits, he supports, and he restrains his chaotic instincts when necessary. Marceline learns to appreciate the love he offers, even when it does not take the form she once needed. Their relationship becomes a symbol of reconciliation between cosmic power and human vulnerability. It demonstrates that connection can thrive even across incompatible scales of existence. Ultimately, the collision between Hunson's cosmic scale and Marceline's human consequence forms the emotional backbone of their story. The consequences of his nature shaped her life. The consequences of her emotional needs shaped his growth. Their relationship does not present a perfect model of family. It presents a realistic and complex portrayal of how two beings may find connection despite fundamental differences. Their story is not defined by bitterness. It is defined by adaptation. It is not defined by regret. It is defined by effort. And through this effort, both father and daughter discover a version of love that survives the divide between worlds. Hunson Abadeer is not introduced as a character seeking redemption. In Adventure Time, he arrives fully formed as a cosmic figure of chaos, bluster, power, and unpredictable energy. His earliest interactions with others reflect this identity. He does not apologize. He does not self-reflect. He does not shape his behavior according to emotional nuance. Yet across the series, something unusual happens. Hunson, without ever announcing a desire to change, slowly shifts. Not dramatically, and not to the degree that he becomes unrecognizable, but enough that when seen across the span of Marceline's life, a pattern emerges. This pattern reveals the shape of his redemption, one of the quietest arcs in the series, and one that relies not on grand acts of transformation, but on small, cumulative steps toward becoming a better father and a more balanced cosmic presence. Redemption, in the context of Hunson, cannot be defined through moral reversal. He does not become gentle. He does not renounce the Nightosphere. He does not abandon his power or reshape his realm into something sentimental. His redemption forms through something more fitting to his nature. It forms through learning boundaries, respecting autonomy, acknowledging emotional realities he once ignored, and adapting his behavior in ways consistent with Marceline's needs rather than his instincts. This kind of redemption is not flashy. It is not heroic. It is gradual, subtle, and rooted in the desire to maintain a relationship with someone he cares about deeply. The seeds of his redemption exist long before Marceline ever confronts him. They form the moment he returns to her life after centuries apart. His excitement during their reunion is genuine, but more importantly, he does not treat her like a child. He recognizes her growth, her independence, and her strength. He approaches her with pride. This pride reveals the first shift. His love is no longer filtered through the expectations of a cosmic ruler who assumes control is necessary. It is filtered through something closer to respect. Respect becomes the first component of his redemption. Respect in this context means acknowledging that Marceline exists as her own person, separate from his influence and not defined by his choices. Hunson learns this instinctively, even if he never articulates it. This respect is evident when he allows Marceline to guide their interactions. In earlier centuries, he treated his role as father through authority. Authority meant dominance. Authority meant control. Authority meant imposing his worldview on her. But when they meet again, he does not impose himself on her environment. He waits for her cues. He interacts with her friends rather than dismissing them. He restrains his overwhelming presence in subtle ways, showing that he is learning how to occupy a space in the mortal world without causing emotional chaos. This restraint is not natural to him. It is learned. It is the product of centuries spent reflecting on his failures and recognizing that brute power cannot mend emotional wounds. Another early sign of his redemption appears in the way he handles conflict. When Marceline expresses frustration or discomfort, Hunson does not react defensively in the same way he might within the Nightosphere. He does not retaliate with authority. He does not silence her. Instead, he hesitates. He listens. He absorbs the criticism, even if he does not fully understand it. This hesitation is a form of emotional growth. For a being who has spent eternity enforcing rules and shaping chaos, pausing during conflict is an evolution. The Nightosphere rewards dominance. The mortal world rewards understanding. Hunson learns to navigate the difference. His redemption continues through the way he approaches Marceline's space. Marceline has carved a place in U that reflects her identity. It contains her music, her friendships, her memories, and her sense of belonging. Hunson, instead of intruding, enters this space with curiosity. He expresses interest in her life. He tries to participate without overwhelming her. His attempts are awkward, often mismatched to the context, but the intention is clear. He wants to connect without disrupting. For a being whose presence naturally disrupts, this intention marks a significant step forward. Understanding the depth of this shift requires recognizing the emotional risk Hunson takes. Emotional vulnerability is unnatural for him. The Nightosphere does not reward vulnerability, it punishes it. Yet in Marceline's presence, he reveals traces of uncertainty. He worries, in his own cosmic way, about disappointing her. This worry represents the clearest marker of his redemption. He does not fear physical conflict. He fears emotional rejection. This fear pushes him towards self-regulation, something he never needed to develop before. Redemption, for Hunson, involves discovering the value of emotional restraint. A key component of his redemption is his growing willingness to accept Marceline's criticism. She does not hold back when she expresses discomfort or frustration. She does not soften her words. Hunson, in turn, does not withdraw from the relationship. He remains present. He absorbs her perspective, even if he cannot replicate her emotional understanding. This willingness reveals humility, a trait he did not exhibit earlier in his life. Humility becomes another component of his redemption. It allows him to view Marceline as someone whose emotional perspective holds equal weight to his cosmic responsibilities. The Nightosphere continues to rely on him, but he learns to shift between roles. In the Nightosphere, he is ruler. In the mortal world, he becomes a father, attempting to learn. This shift between roles forms the backbone of his redemption. It allows him to remain true to his nature while creating space for emotional growth. His ability to switch roles reflects a growing awareness that not all situations require cosmic authority. Some require quiet presence. Some require listening. Some require acceptance of perspectives outside his understanding. His willingness to adapt his behavior demonstrates a growing wisdom gained not through cosmic experience, but through personal relationship. Another crucial element of his redemption is the way he respects Marceline's autonomy. He does not attempt to reclaim her. He does not try to pull her into the Nightosphere. He does not assert parental control over her decisions. Instead, he supports her independence. This respect is consistent throughout their interactions. Marceline leads their emotional reconciliation. Hunson follows. This reversal of authority reflects deep trust. He trusts her judgment. He trusts her worldview. He trusts the life she has built. This trust becomes one of the clearest signs of his redemption. Hunson's relationship with Marceline also transforms how he interacts with others. His later appearances show a being who can joke, cooperate, and even socialize with creatures outside the Nightosphere. He becomes capable of participating in group dynamics that require compromise. This shift is significant because compromise has no place in his role as ruler. Its presence in his behavior shows emotional flexibility gained through his relationship with Marceline. Her influence teaches him how to exist in worlds beyond his own without dominating them. Another sign of his redemption appears through the way he manages his power. Hunson's overwhelming abilities can cause destruction with minimal effort. But when interacting with Marceline in adulthood, he restrains himself. He uses his abilities sparingly, carefully, and in ways intended to support rather than frighten. This restraint reflects a profound change. Power, for him, is instinctive. Holding it back becomes a learned act of care. The ability to restrain power in the presence of someone he loves signifies emotional growth. His redemption also reveals itself through music. Music is the language Marceline uses to process her emotions. While Hunson does not share this creative instinct, he respects it. He listens when she performs. He engages with the art form in ways consistent with his personality. He does not mock it or dismiss it. His respect for her music shows respect for her identity. It shows recognition of her emotional world. This recognition is essential to their relationship. It marks another step in his redemption, showing that he values her expression even if he cannot replicate it. Another important part of his redemption emerges in how he handles Marceline's anger. When she confronts him, he does not lash out or flex his authority. He allows the emotional moment to unfold. He accepts her anger as valid. This acceptance is rare for cosmic beings in Adventure Time. Many respond to confrontation with power or denial. Hunson responds with restraint, showing that he has learned from centuries of distance. This ability to accept emotional confrontation without escalating it reveals deep maturity. The final layers of his redemption appear when Marceline stops fearing him. This shift in emotional dynamic does not happen because he becomes gentle. It happens because he becomes trustworthy. He does not change the core of his nature, but he changes how he applies it to their relationship. Trust forms the foundation of their new dynamic. Marceline trusts him enough to allow him into her life. Hunson trusts her enough to follow her emotional guidance. This mutual trust reflects the success of his redemption. It shows that the emotional wounds of the past have begun to heal. In the end, the shape of Hunson's redemption is unique. It does not follow the path of typical redemptive arcs where characters abandon their flaws or reverse their moral direction. Instead, it forms through a slow evolution toward emotional awareness, respect, and restraint. It forms through the desire to be part of Marceline's life without overwhelming it. It forms through learning boundaries and honouring them. It forms through small gestures that accumulate into meaningful change. Hunson does not stop being Hunson. He remains chaotic, powerful, mischievous, and deeply tied to the Nightosphere. But he becomes a version of himself capable of maintaining a relationship with his daughter. His redemption is not a transformation of nature, but a refinement of presence. It reflects the idea that growth does not require abandoning identity. It requires adapting identity to support those one cares about. This redemption is not dramatic, but it is profound. It shows that cosmic beings can grow emotionally. It shows that relationships can evolve across centuries. It shows that love does not need to be perfect to be meaningful. Hunson's redemption represents the quiet triumph of effort over instinct, and it becomes one of the most compelling emotional threads in Adventure Time. Across Adventure Time, Marceline the Vampire Queen stands as one of the most emotionally complex figures in the entire narrative, a character shaped by centuries of memory, abandonment, survival, and reluctant maturity. Yet beneath all her growth lies a quieter truth. Marceline functions as a mirror for Hunson Abadeer. Through her, the audience sees sides of him that he does not understand in himself. Through her choices, fears, resentments, and moments of compassion, he is forced to confront aspects of his identity that the Nightosphere never challenged. She is not simply his daughter. She is the reflection of everything he fails to see, everything he suppresses, and everything he refuses to articulate. Their relationship is more than emotional tension between father and daughter. It is one of the deepest reflections in the series, showing how a being shaped by cosmic responsibility must face himself through the humanity he helped create. To begin, one must understand what it means for a cosmic being to encounter a mirror. Hunson exists in a realm that reinforces his identity rather than challenging it. In the Nightosphere, his authority is unquestioned. His emotional limitations are irrelevant. His chaotic instincts define the landscape. He does not confront vulnerability. He does not confront consequence. He does not confront the impact of his behavior on fragile beings. The realm adapts to him, not the other way around. This environment allows him to maintain a stable, unchallenged version of himself. He is ruler, stabilizer, enforcer, and source of order within chaos. Nothing in his realm forces him to question whether he uses his power responsibly or whether his emotional choices matter. Then Marceline enters the story, and everything changes. Through her, Hunson loses the insulation that the Nightosphere provides. He encounters a being who responds to his actions not through cosmic instinct, but through human emotion. Her reactions reveal the side of him that the Nightosphere conceals. When he frightens her, he witnesses fear that is not motivated by power dynamics, but by vulnerability. When he leaves her behind, he witnesses abandonment, not interpreted through cosmic duty, but through emotional need. When he returns centuries later, he witnesses resentment that he never intended to create. Marceline's responses hold emotional intelligence far beyond anything in his realm. She becomes the only being capable of showing Hunson the human consequences of his cosmic behavior. Marceline mirrors Hunson in her complexity. Like him, she inhabits two worlds. She is half demon, half human. She navigates identity that is split between power and vulnerability. She carries instincts inherited from her father and emotional depth inherited from her mother. This mixture creates a tension within her that reflects the tension within Hunson's own existence. While Hunson balances cosmic duty with suppressed emotion, Marceline balances human feelings with supernatural instincts. They are both creatures of duality. Their conflict arises because they process their duality differently. Their bond deepens because they share it. This duality becomes especially clear when analyzing how Marceline processes anger. Her anger is layered. It comes from abandonment, disappointment, and the pain of not being understood. Yet beneath that anger lies affection she cannot fully suppress. Hunson mirrors this tension. His missteps stem from cosmic obligation and emotional confusion, but his affection remains constant in ways he does not understand. Both characters experience emotional conflict between love and frustration. Marceline voices it. Hunson struggles to interpret it. In this sense, she becomes the emotional vocabulary he never learned. Another important aspect of Marceline, as his mirror, lies in how she forms relationships. Marceline seeks emotional stability and genuine connection. She gravitates toward people who provide clarity, not chaos. Her friendships, her bond with Princess Bubblegum, and her interactions with the heroes of Oo reflect her desire for emotional grounding. This desire mirrors the emotional void left by her father's absence. Through her relationships, Hunson sees the kind of stability he failed to provide. He sees the emotional world Marceline builds to compensate for what she lacked. This reflection reveals his shortcomings without condemning them. It shows him what she needed, what she became, and how she healed without him. The mirror becomes sharpest through Marceline's music. She expresses pain through lyrics, emotions through melody, and memory through sound. Her songs carry reflections of loneliness, resilience, and longing. To Hunson, music is confusing. It does not follow the logic of the Nightosphere. It communicates truths through emotion rather than authority. When he listens to her music, he hears fragments of the pain he caused. This experience becomes a quiet form of confrontation. Marceline does not lecture him. She does not recount every wound. She expresses them through art, and he confronts them through presence. Her music reflects a version of himself he never intended to show. It reveals the emotional shadow he left in her life. Through Marceline, Hunson also confronts the consequences of immortality. Immortal beings rarely face the emotional progression of children. They do not watch their offspring grow, suffer, and question their choices. Mortal parents see reflections of themselves in their children's growth. They witness direct feedback in real time. Hunson experiences this feedback centuries later, filtered through Marceline's matured identity. She becomes a reflection of his failures and his potential simultaneously. If she had grown resentful and destructive, he might have seen a reflection of a cosmic error. Instead, she grows into someone complex, compassionate, creative, and fiercely independent. Through her, he sees what beauty can emerge even from flawed foundations. This reflection softens him. It humbles him. Marceline also mirrors Hunson's relationship with power. She holds immense strength, but uses it sparingly. She does not rely on force to shape her world. She navigates conflict through emotion, humor, and connection. This restraint reflects a path Hunson never learned. He sees in her a version of power guided by empathy. This contrast expands his understanding of strength. He learns that power does not always require dominance. Sometimes power requires listening. Sometimes power requires support. Marceline embodies a version of strength he cannot replicate but can admire. Another reflection occurs through Marceline's independence. She survives without him. She thrives without him. She becomes her own person. This independence shows Hunson that his fears about being needed were misplaced. Cosmic beings usually anchor themselves through roles, not relationships. They derive identity from obligation. Hunson assumed he could not be a valuable presence unless he fulfilled the duty of protector or guide. Marceline proves this assumption wrong. She does not need him as a savior. She needs him only as a father trying in his own flawed way. This reflection liberates him from the pressure of cosmic responsibility within personal relationships. It teaches him that he can exist with her without fulfilling the roles he associates with worthiness. Another important reflection arises through Marceline's emotional transparency. She is expressive, open, and unafraid to confront her own pain. This honesty mirrors Hunson's emotional guardedness. Through her, he sees what emotional courage looks like. He sees how vulnerability strengthens relationships rather than weakening them. Marceline embodies an emotional clarity he lacks. This clarity pushes him to grow. He learns to avoid dismissing emotion. He learns to pause instead of assuming authority. He learns to consider feelings even when he does not understand them. Marceline also reflects the Nightosphere in subtle ways, revealing Hunson's influence on her. Her mischievous humour, her willingness to tease, and her chaotic streak reflect traits inherited from her father's energy. She does not behave like a creature of pure chaos, but small pieces of the Nightosphere manifest through her personality. She becomes a bridge between realms, showing Hunson how his influence shaped her life, even when he was absent. This reflection reveals to him that connection persists beyond physical presence. It shows him that parts of him live in her, and parts of her remind him of himself. One of the most powerful reflections occurs through Marceline's forgiveness. Forgiveness for her does not mean forgetting. It means accepting imperfection. When she forgives Hunson, she does so with clarity. She recognizes his limits. She acknowledges the pain he caused. She accepts him as he is. This acceptance mirrors the acceptance Hunson learns to offer in return. He accepts her autonomy. He accepts her criticism. He accepts the emotional world he cannot fully understand. Through mutual acceptance, they create a new pattern that neither could form alone. Marceline becomes his mirror in a final, profound way. She represents the possibility of change. She evolves across centuries. She grows beyond trauma. She reconstructs her identity. Her evolution reflects the idea that beings, even immortal ones, can adapt. Hunson sees this and recognizes that he, too, can shift. Her growth becomes a reflection of what he might achieve. Her resilience becomes a reflection of what he desires. Her emotional maturity becomes a reflection of what he lacks. Through her, he sees a pathway for his own quiet redemption. Ultimately, Marceline mirrors all the parts of Hunson that he could not face within the Nightosphere. She reflects his flaws, his impact, his potential, and his capacity for love. Through her, he confronts truths he cannot articulate. Through her, he learns that power does not absolve him of emotional responsibility. Through her, he learns that love can exist within limits. Through her, he discovers that growth, even for a cosmic being, is not only possible, but necessary. In the tapestry of Adventure Time, their relationship becomes one of the richest reflections of how two beings from incompatible worlds can find connection, not by becoming identical, but by recognizing themselves in each other. Marceline shows Hunson who he is. She shows him who he might become. Through her, the shape of his redemption becomes visible, fragile, and deeply meaningful. By the time Adventure Time reaches its closing movements, every major character stands at a crossroads shaped by years of growth, loss, discovery, and quiet transformation. Marceline confronts the culmination of her emotional journey, reconciling her past with the world she has helped shape. Princess Bubblegum faces political and personal reckonings. Finn and Jake encounter the last great challenges of their shared story. What often goes unnoticed is how Hunson Abadeer fits into this approaching finale. His presence, though limited, carries symbolic weight. Even when he stands at a distance, he represents an arc that stretches across centuries, linking the earliest days of Marceline's life to the final stability of U. This chapter explores where Hunson stands emotionally, symbolically, and canonically as the story approaches its end, revealing the subtle yet meaningful place he occupies at the edge of the series' finale. To understand Hunson's place in the finale era, one must first recognize a quiet truth. He no longer occupies the role he once did in Marceline's life. He is not a source of fear or confusion. He is not an absent guardian, casting a shadow across her memories. He has become something smaller, but more meaningful. He is a presence who respects her space, a reminder of her supernatural heritage, and an occasional figure whose chaotic energy appears without destabilizing her world. He stands on the periphery, not because he is unimportant, but because he finally understands that the center of Marceline's life does not belong to him. By the time the final arcs unfold, Marceline has grown into stability. She has forged deep, lasting connections. Her relationship with Princess Bubblegum has matured into something grounded, mutual, and emotionally rich. Her friendships in U form a support network stronger than anything she had in her early life. She carries the wisdom of centuries, the trauma of wandering alone, and the confidence earned through battles, heartbreaks, and reconciliation. Hunson stands outside this circle, watching from a respectful distance. This distance is not abandonment, it is understanding. He knows the life she built does not require his intervention. His role is no longer to protect or guide her. His role is to honor the person she has become. Hunson's evolution becomes clear when examining his interactions during this late era. He approaches Marceline with a gentleness that would have been impossible in the past. Not gentleness of tone or manner, but gentleness of presence. He senses when he is welcome and when he is not. He understands that his chaotic energy must be managed around her and her friends. He participates when invited. He steps back when necessary. These choices reflect a father who has learned not only from centuries of distance, but also from the emotional lessons Marceline has mirrored back to him. His behavior displays restraint, patience, and awareness, traits that mark the conclusion of his redemptive arc. While Marceline prepares for the emotional stakes of the finale, Hunson confronts a quieter, internal evolution. He stands at a point where he must reconcile two identities. He remains the ruler of the Nightosphere, responsible for maintaining order in a realm of chaos. Yet he has grown into a father who understands that emotional connection matters. His challenge is not to choose between these identities, but to balance them. This balance becomes his final personal arc. The Nightosphere still demands authority, and still requires careful steps when he visits. Hunson navigates this duality with more skill than ever before. He no longer views emotional understanding as weakness. He views it as a stability he never expected to cultivate. Another important aspect of Hunson's place at the edge of the finale lies in his relationship with Princess Bubblegum. Their early interactions were marked by tension, as PB saw him as a destabilizing force, and he saw her as an obstacle. By the time the series approaches its end, their dynamic has softened. They do not trust each other fully, but PB respects Marceline's connection to him. Hunson, in turn, respects PB's importance in Marceline's life. He knows she provides a form of emotional grounding that he cannot replicate. He does not attempt to compete. This acceptance represents emotional growth. He recognizes that PB, not the Nightosphere, is the closest thing Marceline has ever had to a consistent, stabilizing presence aside from herself. Hunson's acceptance of PB as a permanent part of Marceline's world signifies another layer of his growth. He does not attempt to influence that relationship. He does not impose judgment. He allows the two to exist without inserting himself. This restraint reflects a maturity that contrasts sharply with his earlier behavior, when he acted impulsively and disregarded emotional boundaries. The finale era shows him adapting to changes he once found uncomfortable, embracing them quietly to support Marceline indirectly. Hunson's presence also reflects the broader themes of the finale. Adventure Time's closing arcs explore identity, legacy, and the passage of time. They show how worlds evolve, how beings grow, and how the bonds formed across these changes hold meaning even when imperfect. Hunson embodies these themes. He represents the idea that beings from chaotic worlds can grow emotionally. He represents the idea that relationships can survive distance, misunderstanding, and pain. He represents the possibility of connection even across cosmic boundaries. One cannot ignore the symbolic significance of his place at the finale's edge. Hunson stands at the border between realms. He is a creature of the Nightosphere who visits occasionally, carrying with him the energy of an older, stranger world. As the finale approaches, undergoes one last phase of change. Power structures shift, conflicts arise, old tensions resurface. Characters confront the totality of their journeys. Hunson's presence during this time reinforces the idea that the world Marceline once wandered alone has grown into a place where she no longer needs to shield herself from her past. His existence in her life, however sporadic, symbolizes her ability to integrate her origins without fear. A pivotal part of Hunson's emotional position near the finale lies in how Marceline views him. She no longer sees him through the eyes of a frightened child or a resentful young adult. She sees him clearly. She accepts his flaws. She acknowledges the limits of his love. She recognizes the cosmic boundaries he cannot cross. She no longer seeks answers from him. She no longer waits for apologies he cannot articulate. Their relationship becomes stable because she treats him as he is rather than who he should have been. This acceptance forms the emotional piece that surrounds Hunson's presence in the finale era. For Marceline, Hunson becomes a relic of the past that no longer harms her. She carries the memory of abandonment, but it no longer defines her identity. She carries the understanding of his limits, but it no longer fuels resentment. She has reconstructed her emotional world through relationships built on clarity, mutual support, and shared growth. Hunson's presence does not interfere with this world. Instead, it highlights her progress. She can interact with him calmly, laugh at his missteps, correct his misunderstandings, and separate her self-worth from his approval. This emotional stability shows that her journey has reached maturity. Hunson's position at the edge of the finale also reflects the evolution of fatherhood in a supernatural context. He does not convert into a conventional father figure. He does not suddenly become wise, gentle, or expressive. His evolution remains consistent with his identity. He embraces emotional growth without abandoning cosmic responsibility. He becomes stable without becoming ordinary. This consistency is crucial. Adventure Time does not flatten him into a stereotype. It allows him to remain complex while growing in ways authentic to his nature. As the series approaches its final conflict, Hunson stands as a figure who is no longer part of Marceline's trauma, but part of her history. He represents where she came from, not where she is going. Yet he remains connected to her journey, ready to appear when invited, ready to support her in the limited ways he understands. His presence is not central to the finale, but it is meaningful. It symbolizes the emotional reconciliation that allows Marceline to move forward freely. His place near the finale also reveals something about cosmic beings in Adventure Time. The series often shows that powerful entities, no matter how strange, can evolve through small emotional steps. The cosmic does not overshadow the personal. Hunson, with all his chaotic energy, becomes proof of this. He grows not through dramatic revelation, but through quiet effort. He learns not through power, but through relationship. This subtlety aligns with the show's broader message. Growth does not need spectacle. It requires intention. The most profound part of Hunson's place in the finale era lies in what he does not do. He does not attempt to reclaim Marceline. He does not insert himself into conflicts where he does not belong. He does not try to rewrite the emotional past. He steps back. He stands at the edge. He respects the world Marceline has built. This restraint is the culmination of his entire arc. It shows that the father who once frightened his daughter now understands that love sometimes means allowing space rather than filling it. In the closing moments of Adventure Time's story, Hunson remains alive, stable in the Nightosphere, and connected to Marceline in a way that no longer causes harm. Their relationship has transformed from fear and absence into mutual understanding. It is imperfect but functional, distant but warm, flawed but enduring. He becomes a symbol of emotional survival rather than emotional struggle, a reminder that even cosmic beings can grow in ways that matter deeply. As Ooh faces its final test, Hunson stands at the edge of the world Marceline helped shape. He is no longer a threat, no longer a wound, and no longer a mystery she must unravel. He is a presence she understands, a father she accepts, and a figure whose distance no longer hurts. In the quiet space he occupies near the finale, Hunson Abadeer becomes something rare in a world of wild magic. He becomes an example of imperfect redemption, shaped not by grand gestures, but by the quiet maturity that comes from finally seeing someone clearly and allowing them to live freely. Hunson Abadeer's legacy in Adventure Time is not written in monuments, triumphs, or cosmic victories. It does not exist in the Nightosphere's hierarchy, in the laws he enforces, or in the contracts he upholds. His legacy does not lie in the fear he inspires, or the chaos he manages. Instead, his true legacy exists in one place only, in Marceline, the Vampire Queen. Everything he represents, everything he struggles with, everything he ultimately becomes, finds its reflection, transformation, and meaning through his daughter. She is the single enduring mark he leaves on the world beyond his dimension. His legacy is not shaped by his cosmic power. It is shaped by the consequences of his presence, the gaps he created, the growth he inspired, and the unexpected emotional evolution that emerges from their long, complicated history. To understand the depth of this legacy, one must see how Marceline carries traces of him across her identity. She inherits more than supernatural traits. She inherits a relationship with power that mirrors Hunson's own complexity. Marceline possesses strength that makes her capable of moving mountains, fighting monsters, and facing ancient threats without hesitation. Yet she uses that strength differently than her father. She restrains it. She shapes it through empathy rather than dominance. She redirects it toward protection rather than authority. This difference does not erase Hunson's influence. It transforms it. Her power becomes a reinterpretation of his nature, a demonstration that power can express care when filtered through emotion rather than cosmic obligation. This reinterpretation forms one layer of his legacy. Marceline shows what his power could look like in a world guided by compassion. Hunson's legacy also appears in how Marceline navigates identity. She exists between worlds. She is neither fully human nor fully demon. She occupies a liminal state that mirrors the duality embedded in Hunson's existence. He, too, stands between identities, between cosmic enforcer and flawed father, between chaos and the small moments of emotional awareness he slowly develops. Marceline embodies this same duality, but she processes it differently. While Hunson accepts his dual structure without questioning it, she uses her liminality to explore who she wants to be. She experiments with music, relationships, aesthetics, and emotional roles. She shows that identity shaped by supernatural origins does not need to remain fixed. It can evolve, it can breathe, it can defy expectations. Through her, Hunson's duality transforms into something fluid and expressive. A more subtle layer of Hunson's legacy appears in Marceline's humour. Her mischief, sarcasm, and chaotic playfulness echo the energy of the Nightosphere. She teases because she enjoys the emotional texture it adds to conversations. She pranks because her supernatural instincts respond to unpredictability with delight rather than fear. These traits do not define her, but they connect her to her father in ways she does not always acknowledge. Hunson's humour is sharper, more chaotic, and often rooted in misunderstanding. Marceline's humour is gentler, more knowing, and shaped by emotional awareness. Yet both humour styles share a common foundation. Both use play as a way of navigating emotional spaces. Both use mischief to create connection. This shared emotional language forms a quiet reflection of Hunson's presence in her personality. Another part of Hunson's legacy emerges through the emotional wounds Marceline carries. These wounds do not define her, but they influence her growth. Her guardedness, her fear of abandonment, her caution around vulnerability, all reflect the gaps created by his absence. These wounds shape her deeply, yet they also lead her toward emotional resilience. She learns to recognize her own patterns. She learns to choose relationships that provide stability. She learns to embrace emotional openness through trust rather than fear. Her healing becomes a reflection of Hunson's failure, but also of the strength required to rise beyond it. The fact that she heals at all, that she rebuilds her emotional world, forms part of his legacy. It shows that the consequences of his absence did not break her. They shaped a journey she eventually transforms into something beautiful. Hunson's legacy also takes form through Marceline's music. Music is the medium through which she processes her memories, desires, and fears. She uses it to turn pain into meaning, loneliness into expression, and experience into art. Her songs reflect the emotional heritage she carries from her father. They echo the ache of abandonment, the confusion of misunderstood relationships, and the bittersweet complexity of reconciling with a parent who never learned emotional fluency. Hunson may not understand music, but Marceline's songs tell his story just as they tell hers. They translate cosmic distance into emotional truth. They reveal the shape of a daughter who grew in the shadows of a father she longed to understand. In this sense, her music becomes the archive of their relationship. Through her, his presence becomes art rather than memory alone. Another layer of his legacy lies in the way Marceline forms lasting bonds with others. Her friendships, her romantic relationships, and her loyalty all reflect her determination to build the stability she lacked as a child. Her bond with Princess Bubblegum becomes one of the richest and most enduring emotional connections in the series. Through PB, Marceline experiences the reciprocity and presence she never found in her father. Yet Hunson's absence indirectly pushed her toward that connection. She learned to value emotional stability because she grew up without it. She learned to appreciate consistency because she faced centuries of inconsistency. This transformation shows how Hunson's flaws shaped Marceline's strengths. His inability to provide emotional grounding taught her to seek it elsewhere, creating relationships that define her life more strongly than any supernatural trait. Hunson's legacy also appears in Marceline's outlook on immortality. She views time differently from humans. She understands loss more deeply. She carries memories that span eras, and she processes these memories with a blend of melancholy and acceptance. This perspective mirrors Hunson's cosmic relationship with time. Yet Marceline's interpretation differs. She does not let immortality detach her from emotional growth. She allows connections to matter. She allows love to shape her path. She takes the emotional stagnation that often characterizes cosmic beings and turns it into evolution instead. Through her, Hunson's immortal heritage becomes a foundation for emotional maturity rather than emotional numbness. Another important aspect of his legacy is the space he leaves for Marceline to define herself. His absence, though painful, gave her freedom. She was not moulded by his expectations. She was not confined by Nightosphere norms. She grew into herself without being shaped by a controlling or omnipresent parent. This absence allowed her to explore, fail, grow, and rebuild as she saw fit. In a strange way, this freedom becomes part of his legacy, one that Marceline ultimately transforms into independence rather than loneliness. Hunson's legacy expands further through Marceline's reconciliation with him. Their relationship, fractured by centuries of misunderstanding, transforms into a connection defined by acceptance. Marceline accepts his limits. Hunson accepts her autonomy. Their reconciliation is not perfect, but it is real. Through this reconciliation, Marceline demonstrates emotional strength that her father never possessed. She becomes the mature one in the relationship, guiding him toward understanding rather than demanding what he cannot give. This role reversal reflects her growth, reveals his impact on her development. She learned resilience, and empathy in the absence of guidance. She learned how to navigate emotional barriers because she faced the largest one in him. His legacy also touches the wider world of U through Marceline's influence. Marceline protects the people she cares about. She participates in shaping the outcome of the Land of U's final conflicts. She uses her abilities and her emotional insight to influence events that extend beyond her personal story. Hunson's lineage becomes indirectly entwined with the fate of U through her actions. His existence shapes her, and she shapes the world. Through her, the Nightosphere's legacy intertwines with the fate of the mortal realm in ways Hunson never intended, but ultimately cannot ignore. Another profound part of his legacy appears in the way Marceline views herself as both vulnerable and powerful. She embraces her emotions rather than suppressing them. She acknowledges her pain rather than hiding it. She allows herself to love deeply and to express herself openly, even when it leaves her vulnerable. This emotional courage stands in stark contrast to Hunson's avoidance of vulnerability. Through her openness, she reflects the possibility of emotional bravery that he could never access. She does not inherit his fear of vulnerability. She transforms it into strength. This transformation becomes one of the most meaningful aspects of his legacy. It shows that his daughter has taken the parts of him that weighed heavily on her life and reshaped them into something healthy and hopeful. Hunson's legacy culminates in the fact that Marceline grows into someone who sees him clearly and forgives him. This forgiveness does not mean she erases the past. It means she understands it. She sees his limitations not as malice, but as nature. She sees his absence not as rejection, but as consequence. She understands his love even when it arrives imperfectly. This understanding becomes the pinnacle of their story. Through her acceptance, his legacy transforms from pain into reconciliation. The emotional burden he once represented becomes a story of endurance, growth, and maturity. Marceline does not exist in opposition to him. She exists beyond him, shaped by his influence, but not defined by it. Hunson's legacy is not cosmic. It is deeply personal. It lives in Marceline's ability to grow from pain, to reconstruct identity, to form meaningful connections, to face immortality with courage, and to transform inherited chaos into emotional strength. His legacy is not his power, his realm, or his title. It is the daughter who stands as one of the most beloved characters in Adventure Time, carrying traces of him in every note she sings, every joke she makes, every moment of vulnerability she shares, and every step she takes into the world she helped shape. Hunson Abadeer's legacy is Marceline, not because she resembles him, but because she transcends him. She becomes the best proof that even flawed, distant, cosmic beings can leave something beautiful behind. His legacy is not perfection. It is the enduring bond between father and daughter, shaped by pain, distance, growth, and a quiet love that survives across worlds.